It's gonna get us more room. He ain't got us no more room.
Come to order, please. Welcome everybody to the regular scheduled board meeting. Ask anybody that has cell phones or other electronic devices to silence them. Ms. Sarah, would you lead us in the invocation and the pledge, please?
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to come together and serve the people of Walton County. We ask that you continue to guide us and give your blessings upon us as we continue to wade through our flooding issues. And we thank you that we had no loss of life, and you'll help us as we go forward in this endeavor. We also tonight, dear Lord, thank you for our chairman as he turns another year older. We ask that you bless him and keep his eyesight strong so that he can lead us as we go forward. We thank you, Lord, also for those that serve us every day, our public works people who have worked day and night to keep us safe, our emergency staff that works every day to keep every citizen in this county healthy and strong. And for all these things, we ask in your name. Amen. Amen. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sir, I appreciate you reminding me of a new birthday. 40 is a pretty rough time to go through.
The vice chair said if you needed a nap somewhere halfway, she'd be glad to.
Okay, very well. All right, I believe we, Mr. Jones, we got one deletion under the consent agenda.
Yes, sir. Mr. Kevin Boyle, who was on the agenda to consider a request for the annual South Walton 4th of July parade, asked to be moved to the May 27th agenda.
Okay.
That's the only change, right, Mr. Chairman.
Need a motion to approve the change. Motion and second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Is there any public comment at this time in regards to any agenda item? Okay, seeing none. We move towards consent agenda.
motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our first item of the evening is a request from Renee Ewell on behalf of the Liberty Volunteer Fire District as their attorney, requesting that the board approve the placement of a referendum to increase their annual non-ad valorem special assessment on the ballot for August 26, 2014 primary election. And this request is simply to allow Liberty District's referendum to increase the annual non-ad valorem special assessment on that ballot for the voters in that district to approve or to not approve as they so see fit.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Ms. Ewell is here if you have any questions.
Anybody have any questions for Ms. Ewell? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, the next item, staff recommends that we issue a request for proposal for document management services. As you know, we have a tremendous amount of retention of documents that we're storing in a number of places. What we will be asking through this RFP is to capture all of those in a digital format to store off-site on an online application, and for provisions to move forward with capturing all of our document retention digitally. We don't know what to expect that RFP would look like, but we do know that it's something we need to consider. In order to give it due consideration, we would kind of need to know what those prices would be, and this is what we're asking for permission to move forward with here too.
Okay. I do have one question. Are they going to go through, I know we have boxes and storage back 20, 30 years or more. Are they going to go through in those that we can dispose of, recommend disposal? So
that would be part of our request, is that they deal with the retention side of it to assure that we retain the appropriate documents, that we dispose of those that are past the retention schedule, that we capture them digitally, and that's a tough word for me to say. So and then moving forward, how do we maintain them in a digital format?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. The next item is a request to allow the ISO, or Insurance Service Office, access to Walton County Fire Rescue to determine the protection rating. It's been many years since this has been done. We believe due to the advances we made in fire protection over the number of years, there may be some advantage to a number of homeowners. So we would request that we work with them to begin that process. Chief Coley's here if you have any questions, or Chief, you have any comments.
Not right away. It's an opportunity for us to move ahead. It's going to give us a baseline to work from. We also have the opportunity to invite the cities, the independent districts, to go along with us. I've been informed by ISO that each fire department from now on will be assessed every 10 years. So this is an opportunity for them to step in also.
Any other questions?
Motion
And
to,
there's no cost involved.
yeah, motion to approve.
Second.
That's even better. Thank you, Chief.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. Next item is we're due to make a new appointment to the Northwest Florida Beaches International Airport Board, I think is properly known as the Panama City Bay County Airport and Industrial District. Our current member is Ms. Donna Moliterno. That term ends the end of June. Peter McClellan, the Executive Director of the airport, asked that we make this appointment so that they can begin the process of acclimating whoever you may wish to choose to serve in that position beginning July 1.
I'd like to recommend Cindy Meadows, if she'll take it.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay, is that a
Second.
motion?
That's a motion, yes, sir.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Yeah, you can vote for yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next item is regarding the lease of the parking lot of the lot at the northeast corner of County Road 393 and County Road 38 across from Etowah Park for seasonal temporary parking. We began this process a couple of meetings ago. We had met with Mr. Clinton Jones regarding that. He was certainly agreeable that if the county was interested, he would entertain leasing it. After the last meeting, when you gave us direction to move forward, we had further discussions, and if you recall, in 2007, those that were here, we rented that facility from June the 15th through Labor Day for a total amount of $10,000. Mr. Jones has made it available again this year from June 1 through Labor Day, which is September the 1st, again for $10,000. Our original recommendation was that the county pay half and the TDC pay one half. In discussions with Mr. Bagby of the TDC, they've agreed to pay the total amount. So it would be for a $10,000 lease from June 1 through September 1. Public Works has been out to look at it. There's very little work that needs to be done to put it in service. So that would be our recommendation that you approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Caveat in
You
there.
do? Go ahead.
Okay. I would like to perhaps see what it would take to purchase this property.
And I've got a call into Mr. Jones for that, and as soon as we hear, we'll report
Because
back to you.
I've forgotten who I was discussing it with. Somebody in the public talked to me about it, about, maybe allowing some limited, we could rent, there's enough there for parking and maybe rent, what do you call I call them concession stands, but that's not it.
I understand.
Food trucks, there you go, and maybe put some bathroom facilities there.
Okay.
You
As
know.
soon as we hear back from him,
Could
we'll
make some
report
money
back to the
off of it.
board.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, got a motion on the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, based on that approval, the next item is for your approval is the contract with Mr. Jones for that lease. Item 2 in that contract will be corrected before it's executed, that the TDC will pay the entire $10,000 as opposed to the county paying half and the TDC paying half. So we'd ask you to approve that contract for execution.
So-
Motion to approve.
Second.
Is that with those changes?
With the changes.
Okay, got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, in our discussions with Mr. Brian Brigman regarding the purchase of property in the Mossy Head Industrial Park for his truck sales facility, we asked that he present to the board renderings and a layout of what his planned facility would look like for your approval to assure it was in keeping with the character that we're developing in that park. What you have before you and in your books is what Mr. Brigman has submitted, that he anticipates this facility to look like, and he's ready to begin the development process and the design of this upon your approval. We have looked at it relatively closely. We certainly think it is in keeping with the character and what we've got going on in the park already. So we would recommend you approve this, that we send back to Mr. Brigman stating that we're fine with his facility as long as it meets the design that he's presented.
Second.
A motion and a second.
Commissioners, real quickly, paragraph 4, there was a blank for the closing date. I think,
That's next one. Hang on.
oh, I'm sorry, my bad. I'm an item ahead, I'm sorry.
We get you.
I was ready.
All right, we had a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. All right.
Yeah, Mr. Davis, we're
Now ready.
based on that, you have a contract before you for the purchase of the property, again, for your review prior to execution. And Mr. Davis has
Paragraph
comments.
4 has a blank, and we had tentatively put May 15th in for the closing date. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, my computer would just drop that date every time we printed it.
I called him
So-
3 times to tell him.
Literally. So I assume the buyer has no problems with that date still.
Mark, he is asked to, let's do it in 2 weeks that way, because we're not sure if Mitchell Title will have everything ready because of the closeness of the hour. So if we could do a 14-day closing from today's date, we're good.
June 1st with them, we'll just
Perfect.
stick it.
Okay.
June
And
1st.
and also, just so the commission knows, all the conditions of Chapter 125 have been met for the sale of the property.
All right, motion to approve
Second.
with the moving of the closing date.
That's moving it to June 1st.
Yeah, move to.
No, I think the 1st is actually a Sunday, so make it the 2nd.
Yeah,
Second.
on or before the first. Or second.
Second. Okay. Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Happy birthday.
All right, see you.
Happy birthday to you.
Renee, give Steve our best. Let us know, and we'll get you an executed copy next day or so. Okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman, the next item is we're requesting that the board allow staff to prepare for submission a federal economic development grant for the Mossy Head Industrial Park wastewater treatment facility. This grant could be up to $1 million, and we know that won't pay for the entire project, but it is certainly another mechanism where we may be able to secure part of the funding. We've had some pretty good discussions with the federal EDA folks, and they've given us some guidance on what they're looking for and how we may better position ourselves. So with your permission, we will move forward with that grant application.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you. Next item is regarding the staff recommendation for the South Walton Sports Complex. Just a little history. We went through a series of public workshops to determine what the greatest needs and how the board could best fulfill those needs for the citizens, particularly in South Walton. We asked for parcels to be submitted for consideration. There were 4 of those submitted in the packet that was presented to you earlier, either in the last week perhaps. Regarding those parcels, it was fairly clear that 2 of them pretty much eliminated themselves due to environmental and access concerns. So that left us focusing on 2 parcels, one being the 98 parcel, which if you recall was the parcel Mr. Davis presented to the board sometime back for consideration and kind of kick-started this, and the parcel from South Walton Utilities. In looking at those parcels, the staff has determined that perhaps the best course of action is to utilize both of those parcels in this process. The South Walton utility property, which you see there on the screen, has some limited access problems. It's probably not in the best position to put lighted fields up or to have regular scheduled events. The Highway 98 parcel, or the MC Davis parcel, certainly has the ability to be developed on a much larger scale. So it's our recommendation that we move forward with purchasing the 34.63 acres, as you see on the screen. And what you see laid out there is representative of what we learned through our workshop process, that the greatest needs were multi-purpose fields, being soccer and football, and baseball, and softball. As laid out there, that has 2 football fields, 4 soccer fields, 4 baseball, softball fields, 3 restroom facilities, storage facility, and a concession stand, and plenty of parking. We recognize that as we move this process forward, we may need to adjust a few things. So today we're simply asking for a kind of a broad approval of moving this process forward. So the first recommendation is that we purchase that, or begin the process to purchase that property, that we work with South Walton Utilities on leasing their 26 acre facility to use to create just an open green space. We would anticipate locating 2 or 3 restrooms there, but putting no other facilities, so that teams could use it for practice. They could go out on Sunday afternoon and play soccer if they so chose, but not have, at this point, not have any scheduled events there. Just simply create an open space where some of these activities can take place. We would recommend that to fund the entire project, that we reopen the line of credit with SunTrust Bank. We've had discussions with SunTrust, and we know what that process looks like. It would not impact our annual payment, or wouldn't increase it any more than it is, which I think is currently $2.25 million a year, somewhere thereabouts. But it would extend the term of that loan by about 6 years. So we can, and we believe that would be for a $10 million extension. We believe we can put all these amenities in for that $10 million. And we would also like to include a few improvements to Helen McCall Park, tennis courts, restrooms, and a storage facility, some fencing, and some lighting. And looking at that portion of it would be between $250,000 and $300,000. But those are things we need to do anyway. So it would be our recommendation, and just to bring it down in a nutshell, that we move forward with the purchasing of the 34.63 acres, that we lease the 26 acres from the South Walton Utilities. We incorporate the improvements to Helen McCall Park, and that we fund it through the extension of our SunTrust line of credit. Now, if you, and we'd entertain any discussion or questions, but if you're inclined to do that, there's a few motions we may need to take in order to get there.
Any
I'll make
questions?
the motion, we move forward.
Okay?
Second.
Motion second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I think
Opposed?
I think it would be helpful, Larry, if
Motion
you let the
carries.
public know what, our ordinance and what we're gonna have to go
Yeah,
through.
and that's what I was going to ask you to take action on that. So in order for us to move forward, primarily with the acquisition of the property, our property acquisition ordinance states that you must find that the acquisition of this property is in the best interest of Walton County and provides for a public purpose as defined in section 2-81 of that ordinance. If you do that, staff will move forward with attaining appraisals as spelled out in section 2-85C of that ordinance. We'll determine and obtain any needed environmental assessments, determine any other associated costs, and identify the selling party.
Recognize the little guys in the red caps.
Yeah, thank y'all.
Thanks, guys.
Little guys, all right.
They're out of here.
They're gone.
They got a
They
ball
have a
game.
game, they have a game.
ball game.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So, Mr. Chairman, that would be the first motion we would ask, is that you find that this property, that acquiring this property is in the best interest of Walton County and provides for a public purpose, and direct staff to begin the process of, as spelled out in the ordinance.
So moved.
Just did.
No,
So
no.
moved.
So moved, yeah.
So
We're gonna
moved.
need a couple.
We got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
The next motion we would ask for, Mr. Chairman, is that you direct staff to clearly identify the funding source, provide the details and the cost. We've really done that. We kind of know what it's going to look like, but we would like a formal motion for direction. We'll bring that back to you.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Hang on.
Just say amen.
Bob, you got something to say?
Amen.
Identify your name for the record.
For the record, my name is Bob Hudson. I'm a commissioner with South Walton Mosquito Control District. My question to Commissioner Meadows and to Mr. Jones is, when you were talking about the improvements to Helen McCall Park, we are very concerned of the ball fields that were built there in the expansion. We have a fence that protects one portion of that park, and I just want to make sure that we take a look at that. We're very concerned. That's a very deep, wide, and when we have,
That's part of,
Yeah.
that's part of
that
our
part of it,
improvement,
Cindy?
yeah. We're gonna fence that entire area over there. We're gonna light it, fence it. We're gonna finish out Helen McCall
thank you.
Park. Thanks.
Okay. I think we better go over that motion and all again. We got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you.
Last item on that, Mr. Chairman, is we're request you to direct staff to prepare a request for proposals or an invitation to bid, whichever may be the most appropriate, to begin the process. We understand that we may have to tweak it as we make some other determinations going through, but as we would begin it, we would use the layouts of what we presented tonight, and we would certainly confer with each of you that have districts who reach into South Walton to make sure we get the right amenities in this proposal before we put it on the street.
Well, the only thing, excuse me there, Commissioner,
No,
but
go ahead. Go ahead.
is to make sure that when we go out for this RFP or whatever it may be, that we have ranges for consideration
Yes, sir.
of the amenities.
Yes,
You
sir.
know,
And-
2 million get you this, 3 get you that, 4, whatever it may be.
And to that end,
Right.
some of the work we did in this process, we worked with Barge Wagner and Associates, who develop these facilities on a regular basis around the country, and the numbers that were in your packet were generated from those ranges that they presented to us. We can spend an awful lot of money, or we can spend enough to get where we need, or somewhere in between. So we would like to get the most bang for the buck.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
as we look at it, we're gonna look at, where's the best place to spend the money, and how's the best way to spend it.
Yeah, and taking into account Helen McCall, what we have there now, and then making recommendations to us
Right,
on that as well,
right.
how to join the two together. Okay.
And, we may have to start, $10 million is
Well, yeah.
barely buys, the land and get, but we can, pay it down,
start.
and it's a step in the right direction.
It's a major
It's getting us there.
improvement, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Need a motion on that?
Yes, please.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay, kids.
Okay, Mr. Jones, I think it's still you.
The next item, Mr. Chairman, is we have a request from the Florida Department of Transportation to approve a classification map, and ask the chairman to sign that map. By way of explanation, every 10 years, the Federal Highway Department requests from the Florida Department of Transportation an approved map regarding roadway classifications. In turn, the DOT requests the counties approve their respective maps. The primary purpose is to determine the participation regarding federal funding opportunities. Once submitted, those roads classified as minor collectors and local roads are eligible for FEMA funding during emergency situations, and all others are eligible for funding through Federal Highway Administration. The attached map is submitted for your consideration. Staff recommends your approval as submitted, or with changes if you see fit. We do have Mr. Jim Newsom here from the DOT, who does this work for the DOT if you have any questions. And interesting enough, Commissioner Meadows and I shared an email this afternoon regarding utilizing federal highway funds for some of the improvements we may need. So we're certainly going to be looking into that in the very near future of how that may benefit us. So, any questions? Again, Mr. Newsom's here.
Wilmer?
Motion to approve?
Hang on a minute, please.
Well, you gotta get a second, man.
Got a motion?
Second.
Okay, for discussion. Mr. Newsom, go ahead.
Any questions?
I don't. Just wanted to make sure that our staff had the opportunity to review it and had no concern with it. Wilmer?
And we'd also had planning staff review it, and they.
Okay with it? All right.
Yes, sir.
I see. Hang on. Any questions to the board, Mr. Newsom? Okay, I guess not, sir. Alan, do
Thank
you have
you.
something? Come forward, state your name for the record.
Yeah, Alan Osborne. Are there any new roads being added to that from the last one as minor and major collector roads?
Are you familiar with the changes, Mr. Newsom?
Yeah, County Road 393 and the Chat Holly Road,
Right.
we'd upgraded those two roads at the request of staff.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Can you make this official? Take that.
What's the date?
I told you it would hurt so much. Thanks, Jim. We appreciate your help.
Okay, moving on.
Let's see.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, last week, as we were moving forward through the flooding issues we were having, the local state of emergency was expiring. Mr. Davis and myself had made an administrative decision to extend that through this week, and we're asking you to ratify that decision, and also asking you to consider extending it another 7 days, because we still got plenty to do, and it's a lot easier to do when we're under a declared state of emergency.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Just to be clear, that's to ratify and extend it.
Ratify and to extend.
Okay. And I would suspect probably this time next week, when that extension runs out, we may, Mark and I will confer, and with your approval, we may
Can
do
we
again.
extend it for 14 days now?
Actually, the statute says 7 days at a time.
At a time.
So we can only do it 7 days at a time. But and we appreciate you giving us some latitude to make those decisions. All right.
I believe that motion was approved, Kim. Tina. Okay, the motion is second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. I think that got it. Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next items, you have before you, we're asking you to approve a resolution recognizing an Emergency Medical Service Week of May 18th through 24th of 2014. We certainly want to express our appreciation to those folks, and we believe recognizing as a week, and passing this resolution will do that.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Yeah, Chief Coley, Chief Talbert, is he out there in the hall?
Somebody speaking.
Be you supposed to.
Okay, I need a second. Give me a second.
Got a second, Sarah?
Second, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
now,
have a second, yeah. I seconded it.
Chief Coley, you got any of your folks here? Bring them forward, please. For the record, gentlemen, personally, on my behalf, I appreciate the work and effort that y'all put in there. I've had the opportunity over my law enforcement career to work with a lot of you, and I know the job that you've done out there in the field and the lives that you've helped save and treat. And for that, whereas in 1973, President Gerald Ford authorized EMS Week to celebrate EMS, its practitioners, and the important work they do responding to medical emergencies. Whereas the Board of County Commissioners of Walton County recognize that EMS personnel provide medical care to sick and injured, often under stressful conditions and high-risk situations to try and save the lives of others. Whereas EMS is recognized for its role in saving lives from sudden cardiac arrest and trauma and getting people to the hospital best equipped to treat heart attacks and strokes, and in setting the stage for a positive care experience, not just through medical skill, but also by showing caring and compassion to patients in scary, distressing situations. Whereas recognition is due to celebrate how far EMS has come and to remind communities about the vital work of EMS practitioners, and whereas EMS should be recognized for its integral role they play in the healthcare system and in their communities. Now therefore be resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Walton County, Florida, declare May 18th to the 24th, 2014 as Emergency Medical Services Week in Walton County. The Board wishes to thank the emergency medical service professionals serving in Walton County for their dedication in assisting the citizens and visitors of Walton County in their time of need, as stated this date. Thank you, gentlemen. Chiefs, we'll make sure y'all get a copy of that for your office. We got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next item, and probably couldn't be a more appropriate time of the last few years, we're asking you to approve a resolution recognizing Public Works Week, the same week, May 18th through 24th, 2014. I don't believe we can say enough about what Public Works has done over the last couple of weeks.
Okay.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Wilmer, any folks out there from Public Works? Come forward.
Honey, they're all out there.
Yeah.
Y'all come on up here. Okay, let me read this resolution. Whereas the Walton County Board of Commissioners is aware that the week of May 18th through 24, 2014 is to be recognized as National Public Works Week. And whereas the Walton County Public Works Department personnel provide services to the residents and visitors of Walton County, and whereas Public Works operations provide for the health, safety, and welfare of citizens and visitors, and whereas without public works services, residents would not have roads, bridges, and other infrastructure to make their lives easier, and whereas the men and women of the Walton County Public Works Department are dedicated and professional group of employees who represent Walton County well, and whereas our employees are the backbone of the Walton County team. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Commissioners, Walton County, Florida, that the week of May 18th through 24, 2014 to be designated as Walton County Public Works Week. We wish to thank all personnel who work in the Walton County Public Works Departments for their hard work, dedication, and commitment to making Walton County a better place to live and visit. Duly adopted today. Thank you. Ms. Harris, come up here, please. State your name for the record, please.
Suzanne Harris. I can't tell y'all, when the flood came, we have about $6 million worth of damage at Edgewater. If it had not been for Wilmer and his crews, I probably would have blown my brains out. I call Wilmer on his cell phone 100 times a day. They came, they did every single thing they possibly could to help us. And if any of you saw the pictures, our drive caved in 20 feet down for about 100 yards. We had a house next door nearly falling in on us. Wilmer got the pump going and got the lake down. And last night at 10 o'clock, we were pouring concrete back to fix our van parking, which nobody thought we could do this quick. but they are the best group of people you've got. I mean, they're all great, but these people are there when you need them. And they had a smile on their face no matter what time, even when I think I called him one morning at 6:30 like I do Larry. So I just want to tell them myself, they are a great group.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Does that mean they get next week off because it's Public Works Week?
They ain't finished yet. I got a couple roads in my district, sure needs some work. Okay.
And I can tell you from our side, the staff we have there sure makes it a lot easier. So, thank you, Wilmer. And
I'd be out there pumping water if it weren't for them. Thanks, guys.
All right, Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next item is from Public Works. We're requesting you approve to advertise for construction bids for the widening and resurfacing of County Road 3280 from Magnolia Lodge to State Road 20. As you may be aware, this has been a long time coming, but you approved the scrap agreement September 2012 for the widening and resurfacing, but through everything that has to be done to get there, we're just now ready to put it out for bid, so we would recommend your approval.
Motion to approve.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Next item, Mr. Chairman, is a request that you approve to advertise for construction bids for the widening and resurfacing of County Road 1084 from State Road 187 or US 331 to State Road 83. This is funded through the County Incentive Grant Program. And again, this goes back to August 13th of last year when we approved to move this forward, and we're now ready to do so. So we recommend your approval.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next item is we request you approve an award invitation to bid 014-008 for the purchase of 7 tri-axle dump trucks. Plus, we're also going to ask that you allow us to purchase 1 additional truck simply because we've got bids low enough that would allow us to spend our budgeted funds on 8 trucks instead of 7. So we were real pleased with the work that went into that. We were real pleased with the bids we got back. And I can tell you these are Freightliner trucks, which are serviced by Empire Truck Company. So our warranty work and service work will be real close to home now. So we would recommend you approve the total of 8 trucks to be purchased from Tampa Truck Center.
Again, where the funding's coming from on that?
Just general budget.
It was budgeted in the
Yeah,
general
these are
budget?
budgeted
Okay.
funds. So it's, but the amount budgeted was anticipated to buy 7 trucks, but because of the good price, we were able
to get 8, okay.
buy a total of 8. And that'll certainly help as we move forward with our fleet.
So moved.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. In February of this year, February 25th, you approved Mansfield Oil as our primary fuel provider due to some difficulties that they were having in meeting some of our requirements set forth. We're asking that you rescind that action and we move forward with RETIF as being our approved vendor for fuel. So would that take 2 motions?
We need to rescind the first
so
one.
Our first action, Mr. Chairman, is we ask you rescind fuel bid 014005, which was awarded to Mansfield Oil on February 25th.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
And based on that invitation to bid, RETIF was the second, at that point, the number 2 supplier. And if you recall, we actually took action to identify them as our secondary source, so we would like to move them to our primary source and award the primary contract to RETIF for fuel delivery and purchase.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. The next item is regarding bid 014-0, pardon me, received from McLean Tennis Courts for tennis courts at Helen McCall Park. That was the only bid we had, and it came in substantially over budget, so we request that you reject that bid.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
We're probably going to either build those in-house or wrap them into another.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bigger project. Next item is we request you to approve an award bid number 014-011 for the widening and resurfacing of County Road 183 South of I-10 to State Road 81 to C.W. Roberts in the amount of $2,172,997.34.
Motion to approve.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
That's all we have, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Bagby.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Mr. Chairman, happy birthday. We have a couple of items. At an earlier meeting, you asked us to meet with the beach vendors.
You thought the pre-board meeting was bad.
Yeah.
Later on.
Are you going to ask me to buy you a birthday present now?
Take you get two.
You asked us to meet with the beach vendors and the Turtle Watch personnel and see if we could come to any resolution or recommendation. We did meet with them at your direction. We listened to both sides. Our basic recommendation is that we allow this season to go forward with the texting program as designed by the South Walton Turtle Watch and have everyone use that texting program or wait until they are released by the Turtle Watch person before they start setting up. And so after this year, we will meet with them again and bring back any changes to that recommendation.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, stand by.
I would ask that as soon as turtle season is over, that you do hold another workshop with everybody to, in case, we do make changes, that we have plenty of time to make changes and hold public hearings and do all the sort of stuff that we're going to have to do to make the changes.
Yes, ma'am, we'll do
Thank
that,
you.
Commissioner.
Thank you.
Come forward and state your name for the record.
My name is Derek Lund. And at the March 11th, 2014 BCC meeting, the vendors expressed the concerns regarding the amendment made on June 2013 that affected the vendors' morning access during turtle season to the commissioners. Heat exhaustion continues to be a major concern for the vendor, as well as the complaints by county residents, as well as tourists regarding setup times. Director Bagby's bottom line recommendation is to give a system a full season to see if it works. However, the system has already been tested for a season, with the exception of May 2013. Director Bagby stated several times during the recommendations that it is too late to make the changes for the 2014 season. I respectfully remind the commissioners that the ordinance we are discussing today was amended in June 2013, which allows all persons except the vendors to access the beach 1 hour after sunrise. Therefore, it is not too late to make the changes for the 2014 season. I previously emailed FWC nesting survey protocols to all of you, according to, and here's a copy if y'all want to look at it.
Hand it to the clerk, please.
According to item 2 of the FWC statewide nesting survey protocols, the survey must be conducted in the early morning hours, preferably beginning at dawn, to optimize crawl interpretation. That's item 2 on the paperwork there. According to item 5 of the FWC index nesting survey protocols, crawl data is reported by beach zones, which are typically 1/2 mile. There are only 2 zones out of the 18 in South Walton that are within the perimeters recommended by FWC. Of those, 10 are well over 1 mile, and zone 14 is well over 2 miles. If these protocols were properly adhered to, a volunteer's walk time would easily be within the perimeters of the previous ordinance. Reverting back to the language in the original ordinance will not only allow these small business owners to access the beach at the same time as everyone else. It will also bring Walton County in line with the FWC protocols. Several vendors attended the nesting survey workshop on March 12th, in which the instructors were adamant that the surveys be done at first light, because it's much easier to locate turtle crawls with the shadows casting by the sun at that time of day. The morning access time remains our number one concern, but during the vendors' meeting, Mr. Bagby requested we express additional concerns. Even though there are several items that need to be addressed, I don't believe it is necessary to do so in a commissioners' meeting. However, Mr. Bagby stated that the vendors recommended that the liability insurance should be raised. Please be advised that the vendors present at the meeting did not make this recommendation. However, we feel commissioners should decide to they should decide to raise the county's requirement. It is our opinion that it should depend on the type of vending and risk factor. For instance, chair vending should have a lesser requirement than paraselling. Thank you for this your time and consideration.
Thank you. Mr. Folks?
Richard Folks with South Walton Turtle Watch. I want to point out that we are out there at first light every day. A couple of facts that I think will show that the program's working well. At the end of 2013, we had just 20 vendors that had signed up to get alerts. And I had concerns about how well this was going to work if they didn't sign up. 2 days before nesting season this year, that number had gone up to 89 signed up for alerts. Today, we have 192 sections where people are signed up to get alerts. I think that they're seeing that the alerts come really early and they can get out there really early. In fact, we've cleared so far. We've had 13 days. We've got 18 sections. That's 234 clears. Of that 234, we've only had 5 that went past 7 o'clock. The latest was 7:09. There were 2 of them at 7:09, and there were 3 others between 7:09 and 7 o'clock. So we are at most of the sections are getting cleared between 6:15, 6:30, 6:45. So I can't imagine a need for the vendors to get out there earlier than that, or that we've got a problem with homeowners or tourists wanting to get out there earlier than that. So from our perspective, I think that the system's working really well. And if you've got any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions?
How many volunteers do you have, Mr. Folks? Because isn't that, I mean, I can see where we could have smaller sections if we had more volunteers, but how many volunteers do you have?
I'm not, I'd be guessing if I said
More than 5, less than 10?
69.
Okay.
And that's just a guess. And absolutely, if we made the section smaller, but already we're clearing these sections 6:15, 6:30, 6:45. So it would seem like to me that's, yes, we've made the section smaller. We could clear some of them, not all of them, because a lot of them do fall within the appropriate distance. So.
Well, I admire anybody that gets out that time in the morning.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I might be having a cup of coffee, but I won't.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Folks.
Thank you.
All right, we got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Bagby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The second issue is a request to research additional beach accesses. We've identified 6, and we have had 1 mentioned in the Destination Improvements Committee by, I believe her name was Celeste Cobina, for places to either improve or initiate beach accesses. And of course, we're always looking for additional beach access. I know that there's been a lot of emails and traffic, and all we're asking is to continue to research. We're at a point where we actually have to send a letter on one of these beach accesses to the state, And to do that, we didn't want to send a letter without guidance from the Board of County Commissioners. I've given each of you a map. Looks kind of like this, where the 6 that we have. The one that Ms. Cabina was referencing was somewhere down near Stinky's, but I haven't been able to find the plot of land, and I haven't seen her since. And I was out of town last week, so we will continue to try to figure out where that access point would be. But all we're asking is permission to continue to research. This is probably a year and a half to 2-year process. We're not going to go out there with bulldozers tomorrow and plow through anything. We're just following a very methodical process to see if we can garner additional beach accesses. These would all be, well, all except potentially one down on the east end would be neighborhood beach accesses. So there wouldn't be automobile parking or anything like that. And subject to your questions, we'd just like a motion to approve us going forward to research additional beach accesses.
Motion to move forward.
I'll second the motion, and I would urge that maybe we could, as you're looking, find a place for regional access where we can have some parking.
Yes, ma'am.
Bathroom amenities. I know, people with young children need bathrooms.
Okay.
But I have a question. I know that at least on one of the proposals that we have coming off of Tanglewood and Sandstone, there's been a lot of discussion both ways about people wanting it, people not wanting it. And I noticed that the proposal makes an unusual jog, it looks like, to come to an area that's maybe a little bit further from the beach. Can you at least seek to see if we can get that modified to make just a straight shot off of Tanglewood, which might be more accommodative to both neighborhoods and the other people that would be using it?
We'll be glad to do that, Commissioner. And I don't know, the gate that is currently there is where that little yellow asterisk is, and so they may have put it there as opposed to the middle of Sandalwood. But I will go back to the state biologist and to the Parks Service and see if that's possible.
Thank you.
Yes.
My understanding that there was a reason, apparently maybe there's a path already there or something, but it would make more sense just to bring it straight down.
I'd like to see if we can accommodate both sides of the issue, that there are people that are concerned about it taking that jog through the other neighborhood. And it would seem, at least from a bean counter standpoint, to be less costly just to go straight down. I'm not a biologist, so I don't know the answer to that, but if you would please take a look at that.
And Commissioner Commander is right. When you start to head south there's a well-worn path that had been previously used, and that's why the biologist said that's the least disruptive or the most preferable to the park.
Okay, I think we've got a couple out there. Yes, right there. State your name for the record, please.
My name's Mary Konoski, and I'm representing the South Walton Community Council. And I understand this is only a request tonight for more research, but since there were some particulars provided about the access through the Topsail Preserve State Park, I do want to put South Walton Community Council on record as being opposed to a boardwalk through the state preserve. By the report that was provided by the Division of Recreation and Parks, a boardwalk through that area would provide disruption to the habitat of endangered and imperiled species. It would create a fracturing and a segmentation of the shorebird nesting habitat. And from what I can tell, it is not in the public interest because it's a trailhead in a specific neighborhood that has requested a beach access where there is limited or no parking and one bike rack proposed. So I cannot see the public benefit for that access due to those factors that describe that particular access. So SWCC would just recommend that we look at alternatives that are less disruptive to sensitive environments and that provide more public access.
Okay, thank you. Come forward, Ms. Nielsen.
when I reviewed this, I thought of something else. Because there's no parking and this is looked upon as a neighborhood access, and because this is state land, couldn't we negotiate with the state to utilize another portion of Topsail that's already accessible and get a nice parking lot and form a consortium of some sort with the state so that it would really be public where people could come to it, because there's such a vast amount of land there. Instead of taking this little one and just doing a footpath down here and spending all that money on that, couldn't we go to the state and say what other alternatives are available with a parking lot where we really are making it public and more accessible to more people than just this small geographic area for that expense? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I got hands up everywhere. I think yours was up, sir, sitting on the floor. State your name for the
My
record.
name's Mark Gustav. It seems like everybody's talking about this one access. I think Mr. Bagby clearly stated they're looking at other things. What I want to talk about is there's such a need on the west end of 30A for more beach access. Mr. Bagby said there was a study done or a survey done as far as tourists, which is very important to everybody in this room. And their number one concern was more beach access. I think this is something that the board needs to look at, and at least let's just go forward with this. Like Mr. Bagby stated, we're not going to get bulldozers. Nobody's doing bulldozers. Let's just go one more step, see where this ends up before we start talking about, endangering animals, things like that. So I encourage everybody on that board to please vote in favor of moving forward.
Thank you.
Can I get Rick or Lewis to,
It's a technical.
Go forward. State your name for the record.
Say technical terms.
Technical.
Norman Froschner.
Okay, Norman.
I live in Beachview Heights. Several of my neighbors are here. I've lived there for 30 years. When I bought my property, I was under the understanding that there was no public beach access in the neighborhood. That's what I bought 30 years ago. I've been living there ever since. This is going to make a gigantic change in our neighborhood. I don't even go on vacation. I like our house. I like all of our neighbors like things just the way they are. There's no reason for anybody to pull into our neighborhood at this point unless they live there. This is what we like. This is what we have. This is what we've had for 30 years. Now, we have the state park. It's an award-winning state park, right a half a mile, not even a half a mile from this proposed access area. You've got 70-car parking lot that's mostly empty. It can be utilized by everybody in this end. Now, getting to the parking thing, how in the world is this going to be a no parking access?
Well,
What's going to stop people from pulling in off of 38 into all
I understand that, Norman. I understand there's other folks within the areas there. You're talking about things that we haven't got to yet.
I know.
All he's asking tonight is for us to move this thing forward so he can do the research and come back at the proper time.
Okay, can we please stop saying that this is a no parking situation? There's no way that people are not going to drive into our neighborhood and park on our streets to access this beach access.
Okay.
All right, that's my
Point taken.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, the gentleman in the back, next to the wall.
While he's coming up, let me make sure I understand Mr. Bagby's recommendation is to look at all six, and we may, when we get further down the road, cull some, add some. Is this correct?
Yes, ma'am. We are looking, some of these will be either in an unfunded requirement or in a funded requirement in the budget that we're developing. The one that requires the letter to the state is the Topsail one, or the one there. I've also had conversations with the head of the Park Service at Grayton Beach, who also oversees Deer Lake. He's shown me their draft plans to, improve parking or increase parking about 10 times. We're trying to figure out some way to help them with that. or have a part so that it can benefit the residents of Walton County, both, not just South Walton, but of Walton County. So we're looking at multiple avenues to improve access to the beach. The parking that they have at Deer Lake, that they're proposing at Deer Lake, but we're not anywhere to where we're going to spend a penny. We're just having discussions and looking at plans. And I don't want to, you know, that's probably a 3 or 4 year process from where we are.
All right. Sir, come forward, state your name for the record.
Thank you very much for hearing me. My name is John Robinson, ladies and gentlemen, and I've grown up in South Walton. Went to high school, went to junior high school here, used to water ski on Campbell Lake. I know the grounds. I've been a permanent resident living in the Beachview Heights subdivision for better than 20 years. I'm on property in the surrounding areas. And I understand that we're discussing this in a broader sense, that we're just jumping in at this to examine it. I understand that. But I'm looking here at the agenda report that's been prepared by the TDC, and there's no mention in this report of the Beachview Heights subdivision. When you consider the report, they talk about the trailhead. They even talk, in fact, about a pedestrian gate that will be put up at the entrance to the park. Access to the park would be restricted to pedestrians, is what's spelled out. That sounds good enough that they're going to restrict the pedestrians to the park, but what about the congregation of people who are entering the park, which would be in our neighborhood? There's already the problem before the county commissioners of the parking that's spilling over from the businesses into the neighborhoods, to the extent that law enforcement is being, I understand that there's going to be a more aggressive effort in that regard this year. And at one point, I think it's Mr. Bagby speaking before the Herald, the Defuniak Herald, says that the public would see an increase this summer in the enforcement of parking regulations by the county. So I think that's a positive. But I don't think that this photograph shows that we can expect anything but a continuation of the abuse of our neighborhood, where people park, they pass through. I'll show it for the people.
Direct your comments to the board, sir.
Fair enough. That the parking will be there. The parking will be there. Strangers will be coming into our neighborhoods. And so I'm questioning that in the sense that I'm looking at I guess it's Sheriff Atkinson speaking about the Neighborhood Watch Program. How are we going to dovetail the Neighborhood Watch Program with these strangers who are being welcomed into our neighborhood? It's a genuine problem. So I appreciate it. Your staff's been wonderful as we've talked to them. Your consideration's greatly appreciated.
Okay, thank you. Come forward, ma'am. State your name for the record, please.
Celeste Cabina, and I'm I'm all for beach access. I even suggested one, which I'll get with you on that. I spoke with someone at the TDC about where to do their research, but the access that's being proposed at Topsail Preserve is just a bad idea. You know, the state purchased a number of years ago, about 20 years ago, this land here at Topsail Preserve, and it is designated a preserve because it's one of the top properties in the state of Florida. This wasn't purchased to be consumed and used. It was purchased for the enjoyment of not just the neighbors to have an easy access, convenient access, but it was purchased so that generations to come, your grandchildren and their grandchildren, will be able to enjoy and appreciate an area along the coast here in Walton County that has not been disrupted. And this east end of Topsail is probably the largest section along the whole panhandle that has not been disrupted. There's a beautiful access, and if you hadn't been there, I suggest you go. The people that have been pushing this, the people there at the Cypress Dune neighborhood, their neighborhood is probably the closest to the current access there at Topsail Preserve. It's a beautiful access. You can go in. Yes, you have to pay to get in, but all of the parks are like that. You'll have to pay at this access that they're wanting for their convenience. And that's the thing. You know, at some point in time, and we're getting real close to it, every inch of private land in South Walton will be developed. And as we saw a couple of weeks ago, some of it probably shouldn't have been. But it is, and it will be. But these sections are state parks that were purchased to conserve something for generations to come should not be fragmented and destroyed for the convenience of a handful of people. And I'd like to suggest, I mean, the cost on this thing is over $700,000. And I spoke with the folks over there in Tallahassee, and they go, we don't have the money for that over here, you know? And so I'm just thinking, if the TDC's got that kind of money for one boardwalk, I think there's a lot better use for that money. And one of the things I'd like personally to see is, you know, it's been mentioned, not today, but that the parks are underutilized. Well, I'd like to see maybe some of this $700,000, instead of destroying what we have and fragmenting it, that we go in and we maybe use some of that to get information out to the public, to let them know about the accesses, what the parks provide. I also would like to suggest that some of that fund could be used if the new shuttle that's coming up. If people want to get into the parks but they don't want to drive, allow for that. But that's where these funds are better utilized, and I think that we need to conserve something and enjoy it without consuming it and using it up. And I suggest everyone go into the park. They have done a beautiful job at the Topsail Preserve. It's open to the public. There is no need for this access on the east side that will destroy it.
Thank you. All right, we got a motion and a second. Okay, come forward, please. Hang on, Jim. State your name for the record.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Susan Palladini. I represent the Coffee Nature Preserve. We are the neighbor and community partner to Topsail Hill Preserve. We were established in 1978, and our members campaigned for over a decade for the acquisition of this beautiful piece of property. The Topsail management plan, the current management plan states that resource considerations are given priority over user considerations. I would encourage all of you to take a look at their management plan. Their number one goal is to protect resources and to maintain natural communities. So I thank you for the opportunity to go on record stating our opposition to this boardwalk, because it will fragment these natural communities. Thank you.
Thank you. State your name for the record.
Alan Vaquera. I think it's obvious at this point that the study that you have on these different boardwalks, there's absolutely no opposition against these looking at other opportunities except the one at Topsail. And the comment that I heard of somebody suggesting that the proposed route for the beach walk be moved into a more direct path through to the beach didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, because there is an existing trail that the neighbors down here have used over the years. If there was any kind of a walkover, why not utilize the existing trail instead of devastating and tearing up other vegetation that has not been disturbed? And what I don't understand I mean, why is this thing being proposed as a 10-foot wide beach walkover? People are going to be driving their golf carts down the beach. When I read this thing,
I think I can answer your question. In the report that the state did, they said it had to be 10 feet wide, so they could get their vehicles down to maintain stuff. I mean, it's an 8 foot wide. That's what the report that I read said.
There's a typo on the funding, and I believe that's where it's 10 foot. Yeah, it's 8 foot. If you read the report, it says 8 foot wide. And the cost, I was going to correct the record because I know everybody will get all excited about $700,000. The cost to the TDC, we believe, will be $250,000 to $300,000 for the boardwalk, and as an 8 foot wide elevated walkover. It's not a 10 foot wide, and they acknowledge that they made a mistake on that part of the report.
And who pays for the rest?
There'll be a cost share there's 4 neighborhoods there, with probably 400 or so lots. And that's part of the reason we're looking at this, is those 400 homes or home sites right now go down to one of our most crowded beach access points that we have. And we're trying to figure out where those people can access the beach. It's not people coming from Freeport that would pull off there. There wouldn't be any signage, just like there isn't any signage at most of our neighborhood beach accesses, because most of them don't have parking.
Okay.
But that's all right. But there's already a trail there that the neighborhood's already been utilizing. It's been very negligible in impacting the area at this point in time. And to come through in there with an 8 foot wide boardwalk that people are going to drive their golf carts down to and park on the boardwalk seems rather obtrusive to me.
All right, thank you. All right.
There's a motion on the floor. Let's call the question.
Motion and second, call for the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Move forward on it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The last issue, just want to update you on, March was a tough month, not just for us in bed tax collections, but for both our neighbors. Everybody had double-digit declines, basically because Easter was in April this year as opposed to March of last year. But for the record, ours declined 13.35% over March of last year, and that brings us down 4.64% for the year. We believe April will be better, or at least as well as last year. And I will tell you, anecdotally, I've talked to numerous bed tax collectors. They are preparing for the best June and July that they've ever had. So, subject to your questions, that's all we have this evening.
Mr. Bagby, I think we can once again blame Mother Nature.
Yes, ma'am.
For, March, and we had an unusually cold April. So if it follows, it's going to be rather warm in June and July and August.
It is, and what a lot of the bed tax collectors told me is they got some of their base spring break crowd, but what they did not get any of are the people that decide on Wednesday to come down to the beach for the weekend, because we just had rainy, wet weather, cold weather on the weekends. So, thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item I have, actually the first 3 items, are interlocal agreements for ride-alongs with the county fire rescue and various colleges. The first one is a request to approve a ride-along agreement with Chipola College.
Motion approved.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
The second was essentially the same agreement with Northwest Florida State College.
Motion to approve.
Second.
With motion and a second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries.
And the last one is with the Washington Holmes Technical Center out of Chipley, Florida.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. The next item is request to approve a contract for EMS billing service with EMS Consultants. Commissioners.
Motion to approve.
A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Commissioners, as you know, we have now circulated a proposed new noise ordinance. We were asking the commission for permission to advertise for a public hearing. We have suggested May 20th at the South Walton Courthouse Annex to adopt the proposed, I'm sorry, I'm one ahead. We were asking you to hold a special meeting for a public hearing on May 20th at the Courthouse Annex at 4 p.m. to adopt the proposed amended roadside fundraising ordinance. And all we're asking you to do is adopt a day or have a day for the public hearing. There's only two small changes in this proposed ordinance. The first is to include in the prohibitions against roadside vending and solicitation, the multi-path and other sidewalk systems, and the other is to include Scenic 98 and Highway 98 in the prohibitions.
What's the impetus for this change?
We had, frankly, the votes moved. Once we cut it out in other parts of the county, they just found another place, and it caused some disruption in Seaside, for instance, where folks had moved down to the multi-use path there and out on Scenic 98.
It's a problem on Scenic 98. Motion to approve. Holding the hearing on May the 20th.
That's correct.
At 4 p.m.
Thank you.
That's going to be a busy day already. We've got a number of land use issues at that one.
This is at 4 o'clock. Yeah, we're starting at 9 on the others, right?
No, we're starting at 4.
5 o'clock.
And Commissioner, we can move it to the first meeting in June if you'd
We
like to do
haven't.
that.
Shouldn't take.
Well, we didn't have any comments on it last
No,
time.
we haven't had any comments.
So I wouldn't think we.
Okay,
Shouldn't take too long.
so we'll do it at 4 o'clock. Okay, we got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you. The next item, Commissioners, is the exact same request as it relates to the new noise ordinance. I hope our new simpler and easier to enforce noise ordinance. And we would ask you to schedule a public hearing on May 20th or any other date.
Yeah, let me just make a comment about that. Because it's May 20th and it's an off date, people aren't expecting it. I would just recommend that we have it on June the 10th, which people are normally attuned to attending a meeting every other Tuesday. I think there'll be a lot of comments on it. I don't know. I'm just thinking that. So instead of having it on May 20th, have it on June the 10th, just because it's a normal board meeting. Because you know what happens when we have a special meeting and somebody doesn't get notified of it.
We have no problems with advertising it for that day. I will tell you.
So my motion would be the June the 10th.
Second.
And I will tell you, we have included the Sheriff's Department's comments in the current draft that's circulating. So
June the 10th. I just think more people would be
I'll
apt
agree with
to.
June the 10th, but we're having some real problems. I'll be glad when we get this adopted.
Okay, so the motion is have the public hearing on the noise ordinance June 10th at 4 o'clock. Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Commissioners, we have a claim by a person against the Walton County Housing Authority, and we are asking you to allow Costanza Brooks and Smith out of Jacksonville to handle this claim with the Florida Commission on Human Rights. This is a fairly, that's a wrong way of saying, this is an absolute very narrow area of the law that I would feel extremely uncomfortable trying to handle, and Costanza Brooks has handled human resources issues for us in the past. And there's an engagement letter for your approval.
Board's wishes.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Commissioners, the next item is we are not currently a party to the Abbott Revocable Trust v. Olson and Associates of Northwest Florida case. We were a party in the past. We've been dismissed. However, there's going to be a request to depose some of our staff folks, and I would normally undertake just to appear with them, but this is a case that went on for a number of years, has a large case file, so I would ask you to re-engage the Warner Law Firm for the purpose of appearing and handling those depositions, since they were involved in the case from the beginning. and there is an engagement letter for your approval.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. Lastly, I was contacted by Mr. Matthews Ford on behalf of the Sandestin Investment Group, or Sandestin Investment, Inc. They have asked to, they've made a request to reschedule and continue the Sandestin DRI compliance hearing, which is currently set for June 6, 2014 at 9 a.m. at the South Walton Courthouse Annex. Just by way of brief history, as the Commission is well aware, we had this hearing set originally in February of this year at the request of the applicant or developer and the Sandestin Owners Association. We continued and reset that hearing for a May date. On April 22nd, at the request of Mr. Heath on behalf of some folks he is representing, you continued the May date to June 6, 2014. As I represented to the Commission at the time of your vote then, Mr. Matthews had not agreed to that date for and on behalf of the declarant. Your motion included the possibility of us working out a separate date other than the June 6th date, but that has not happened. So I understand Mr. Matthews is here asking for that continuance today.
Mr. Chairman, before we proceed, I have a business conflict and I'm going to recuse myself. I've signed the appropriate form to the clerk.
Let me ask you a question on that. So they're asking for a continuance because
I don't want to say, because I think I know, but I would prefer.
Somebody's going to be out of the country for the month of June.
Yes, ma'am. I understand somebody's going to, the applicant himself is going to be out of the country for the month of June. That's what I understand.
I guess I misread this, because my paper says move the hearing to June.
I actually had a typo.
You had a typo.
It should be from June 6th.
Right.
We actually,
we've already done this. Okay.
We did correct the agenda.
Okay, Mr. Matthews, come up, state your name for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Dana Matthews for Sandestin Investments LLC, the developer at Sandestin. Mark is correct that back on January 28th, the Commission voted to set a compliance hearing for Sandestin to be conducted on May 13th, and it was agreed to and voted on unanimously by this board. At some point in time after that, unbeknownst to us, that date got changed, which would have been today, by the way. And I assumed that somebody realized that and wanted to set up for a special meeting, and it got reset to May 15th. And my client, of course, planned his entire summer around that, was planning on being out of town the entire month of June. Approximately 2 weeks before y'all met on April 22nd and changed the date, Mr. Heath appeared on behalf of Mr. Osborne and Mr. Abbott and some others and indicated in emails to the commissioners as well as to Mr. Davis, myself, and Mr. Vorbeck that he had a conflict for that date because of one of his consultants and wanted to move the date from May 15th. Over the next 10 days, again before your April 22nd meeting, there were a series of emails that went back and forth between the lawyers and had talked about, Mr. Davis had suggested May 21st and May 30th, which was apparently agreed to except by Mr. Heath because he still had a client that had a conflict. On April 21st, the day before your meeting, at 3:46, on my way here to a meeting with Mr. Davis on something else, that we received an email that, well, how about June 6th if the commission's inclined to grant and not do these other dates in May? And I met with Mr. Davis. I explained to him that my client was out of town the entire month of June. One of my consultants could not be there, and it was my understanding that was going to be relayed to you the next day. I've seen the tape of the meetings. It was not relayed to you other than that weren't sure what our position was. Mr. Heath and Mr. Vorbeck were here. Mr. Heath explained the reasons that he needed to have a continuance because of one of his consultants, and the meeting got changed despite the fact my client's 1 month trip to Africa and the money he's paid and all the months of planning, I guess it wasn't important. During the next few weeks, 2 weeks actually, it's my understanding this date was going to be taken care of and changed, That never happened, and I had to send a letter on April 30th, which I'm going to introduce into evidence as Exhibit 1 for the record, laying out the historical sequence of the timing on this hearing. But at the end of the day, last Thursday, my client decided that because of the other things that have happened in the last few weeks with the county, that he's canceled his trip and he will be here for June 6th. One of our consultants won't, and that's a problem that we got to deal with. So that part of my appearance today is being withdrawn, that we will appear on June 6th for this compliance hearing. But there's some other parts that I've communicated with Mr. Davis about, and that's contained in my letter, and that deals with the issues of what are we going to hear on June 6th. On April 22nd, it was represented to you at that meeting that the staff was working on a revised report, and it would be available by May 1st, and it would be circulated to this commission and to the lawyers so that we would have at least that 36-day period of time in which to work with our consultants and our witnesses to prepare for whatever it is that staff is going to come up with. And again, I want to remind the commission that this hearing, there's two parties. There's the county and there's my client. That doesn't mean other people can't participate and provide public comment and produce whatever evidence or witnesses they want to, but there's two parties to this action, and it's governed under Chapter 380. And as of today, on the 13th, we still do not have that report. I was not the only one that raised this issue. The other lawyers have raised this issue as well in emails. So that's an issue that we would like to know when this report by county staff will be made available for everyone so that we will have a fair and reasonable opportunity to prepare for the June 6th hearing.
Mr. Matthews, we have confirmed today, actually, that the report will be ready for release on Monday, May 19th. Is that correct? Yeah, Monday, May 19th.
Later today, so perhaps Tuesday.
We had other information. In fact, I think you even provided some other information. They wanted to make sure that they vetted completely. And so it will be ready May 19th.
Okay.
And by the way, and I'm sorry to interrupt you. My plan is, since then I'll know the number of issues we'll be dealing with, is within 2 or 3 days of that to issue the to issue the order of proof and the agenda essentially for that meeting.
And that's again my third point that I wanted to bring up is that under Chapter 380, local government, county, has the obligation to monitor compliance with DRIs. If you go to the administrative code, it requires local government to adopt rules and procedures for how they do that. Walton County has never done that. And I don't know if this memo we're going to get from Mr. Davis is going to be that rules and regs that we're going to be governed by on June 6th, if you're going to have another meeting of the county commission to approve the rules and regs. But that's an issue because it deals with the opportunity to be properly prepared to address the commission on the issues that they feel are important.
And we will have that available to you, Mr.
Okay. Is the BCC going to adopt those?
I doubt it. I mean, frankly, we have quasi-judicial, we have those policies and procedures in place today. There might have to be because, and we have quasi-judicial meetings every week. There might, when they were written, they did not anticipate objectors. Okay. And given the Seminole County case and some other things that have come along since the adoption of those particular set of rules of procedure, we're going to have to add a couple of things, but I think we can do that by policy and vote before the meeting on June 6th. So it'll probably be at the next regularly scheduled meeting. Okay. And we're not talking a major overhaul. We just have to, under the Seminole County case and the new legislation that came out last year, we have to figure out the role of the objectors in terms of what they are allowed or not allowed to do.
The last issue that I'd like to raise is that in a series of emails that Mr. Heath sent on behalf of Mr. Osborne, Mr. Abbott, and others, that he has challenged and asked for the recusal of Chairman Chapman and Commissioner Commander, from participating in these proceedings. And he's laid out the various reasons, and y'all got copies of those emails because at least you were shown to be copied on them. I have in my April 30th letter to Mr. Davis with the enclosures, we've challenged Ms. Meadows' impartiality to sit and hear the issues with Sandestin on a compliance hearing, and I hope Mr. Davis has given you a copy of my letter and its enclosures, and again, I'll introduce it here. I don't need to go into it, but my question is this, and I may not agree with Mr. Heath on just about anything, but I do agree with him on this, and that is when a determination is going to be made by any commissioners, any of the three of you that have been challenged thus far, as to whether you will or will not participate. The reason why I bring that up is because all these lawyers and all these consultants are planning their day to come spend with you and to hear some very significant legal issues. And it is very expensive. And that what we were told in an email was that would be an individual commissioner's decision as to whether they chose or chose not to recuse, and that decision could be made as late as the day of the hearing or even during the hearing. And so I have not seen anything since that time, and I just want to make sure that before we spend all this time and energy preparing, that there are going to be a quorum to have a hearing, and I would just like some guidance.
Well, let me do two things. One, I don't make that decision, as you know.
I know that.
I have advised I have not talked to Ms. Meadows yet, frankly. I just haven't had a chance. But I've advised them what the law is, and don't let me speak out of turn, but it's my understanding that we don't have any intentions of any recusals today. However, I want to make sure everybody's clear on this. The decision to recuse, as I said in the email, can be made before the hearing, during the hearing, and before the vote. The law is pretty clear that the only standard that the commissioner has to entertain is whether or not he or she can render a fair and impartial decision. That's it, and it is a subjective standard. It is not one that the courts, frankly, review, but it is a question of whether or not you can render a fair and impartial decision. And my conversations are at least two of the three are comfortable with that, with where they are on that. But that doesn't mean the day of. Listen, I've had it happen at school board meetings where we had a witness come in that I wasn't aware of, frankly, and I had a long-standing personal relationship where I felt like I couldn't render a fair and impartial decision because I felt like I would believe their testimony in a way that would be different, the normal standard of belief, frankly. So I don't want to. I can't promise you that we will have a quorum that day because it might be that four commissioners decide none of them can render a fair and impartial decision, or they all can't. I understand your dilemma in terms of getting ready, but that's just something in this setting. It's just a risk we all have, and I wish I could tell you something different than that, but I can't. And I know you understand that. I'm not telling you anything you don't know.
No, but it hasn't been brought up at a commission meeting, sure. And I thought it was important to address because it affects not just the commissioners individually, but it affects my client and it affects the other lawyers and their consultants and their clients as well.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary, go ahead. Mr. Warbeck, state your name for the record.
Thank you. Board members, my name is Gary Vorbeck. I'm an attorney representing the, the Sandestin Owners Association. And first off, there's not going to be a continuance. We're on for June 6th, correct? Okay, 9 o'clock. Now, thank you for that. And then Dana made a statement. I just want to back that up. There's only two parties to this. Well, I totally disagree. We've been, the SOA, on behalf of the SOA has been involved in trying to have this hearing, or it's a similar type of hearing for several years. And if you remember back, and I believe it was in January, and Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, when we first brought it, and the SOA was going to present a case at the time of a project and coming from the board, and our reply was going to show that they're not in substantial compliance, and that's when this board decided, well, let's schedule a separate meeting because let's not get all these issues tangled up. And if Mark, correct me if I'm
That's correct.
And so we're party to this, and we're a party of substantial interest in it being that we're the Sandestin Owners Association of all the properties and values that they represent there in Sandestin. So I just don't want Mr. Matthews' cavalier statement that there's only two parties to this. Mr. Davis is going to set up a process, and I agree with that. He is correct. The Land Development Code provides for quasi-judicial issues to be heard, and I think it always got to be as tweaked as he stated. So I agree with him on that. So I'm aware of, and finally, I'm aware of Mr. Heath's issues. I've seen the copies of those emails and those correspondence, but I haven't seen any of the correspondence from Mr. Matthews. So I would like to get correspondence regarding the positions he's taking on conflicts of interest. I haven't seen them. So if you have any questions for me, but we're set for
June 6th.
June 6th.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Osborne. State your name for the record.
I just got it the other day.
Yeah, for the record, Alan Osborne. Our attorney would be here, but his wife was in the hospital, so everybody has things that come up. I take offense to what he said, that there's only two parties to this. Let me tell you something. The section of that development order that I live in represents about 25% of the acreage within that development order. And you count that with what the SOA represents, you'll find that we're not the minority owner here. We're the majority of people here. And we've got hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars at stake. And a lot of them, $1.5 million a piece of property at a time. And we've been waiting for this thing for a long time. But I don't want to get here that day, and I've not seen anything that says, hey, I have special rights under this development order and I'm the only party. That's crazy. There's nothing in there in 380 that says that. Anybody has the right, and somebody in this room said that a development order is a right. Well, it's not a right for a single individual or a company. It's a right to everybody who lives in that development order for the rules to be followed. So to say that we're not going to be a party of it is going to create a stink, because there's literally thousands of owners that aren't represented by Sandestin Investments that are affected by this development order. So we should continue on June 6th, and if one of our representatives can't be here, or one of Mr. Matthews' representatives can't be here, then they can do a videotape testimony, and we can show it right there. And the other thing is this: we deserve to be heard fairly. All three parties, if that's the only parties that are going to come forward, they should all have equal time to defend their position. Because this is important stuff. We're talking about the biggest development in Northwest Florida here. And a lot of us have everything we own riding on it. So we just deserve the right to have equal time, and not for a lawyer to get up here and say, oh, there's only two parties. A court didn't determine that. Not at all. This is a public hearing for the public, and that includes the people who live there. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
And let me clear one thing up, and I didn't mean to. I use the term objector because that's the term the court has used, but that could be any person who wants to speak. I know that Mr. Heath's going to be representing Mr. Osborne, so we'll set it up with the folks we know are going to be represented will have the same opportunity. But I don't want to give anybody the impression that the term objector just means one person. It could be 75 people. And also, the term is a little misleading because the staff report may end up being in support of the staff report, even though the term they use for who they are is objector. So I just didn't want that term to get people confused, okay?
And I also like to echo Mr. Vorbeck's comments that we've put everybody on whatever emails that were sent. But I haven't got any courtesy copies of what Mr. Matthews has sent out, just like Mr. Vorbeck. So we try to send everything to both of them, and they can laugh about the emails if they want to, but at least we're including them in the talks.
I'll consider it a public records request and get it to you.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Got a motion and a second, I believe.
No, I don't think. I think since there's a stipulation to have it on the 6th, there'd be no need for a motion. We're scheduled for the 6th.
June
It'll be
6th.
advertised
Okay.
next week.
All right. Moving right along then. Ms. Meadows.
Well, I have this under my name, but I just wanted to thank staff who did a great job on analyzing all the different sites for the sports complex and all the different numbers and everything, and Mr. Bagby, who spearheaded the public workshops and et cetera. And just thanks to everyone, and looking forward to moving forward with it. That's it.
Thank
That's
you.
all I have.
Commissioner Commander.
I just have one quick item. I'd like to pass out to you some copies of something I got out of the newspaper yesterday. It's Destin looking to tax incentives to attract more businesses to Destin. Incentives. Just take a look at it. It might be something that we might want to consider. And I'll bring it back up again, give you time to read it and see if there's something that we want to look at.
Commissioner Enfield.
Nothing.
Commissioner Pridgeon.
Nothing.
You got one for Tina?
For who?
Here.
Another one?
You got one.
Okay, under my topic tonight is request to hold a joint BCC Planning Commission workshop to discuss the US 331 corridor standards that has been kicked around a little bit, but I've asked staff to find out all the property owners that are on the 331 corridor in the unincorporated areas and send them a personal invitation to a workshop, joint workshop in August, I believe is what we're looking for now, to discuss it and go over what we've already kicked around and get their input, and to try to do this all in basically one meeting so everybody hears it, both the planning and the BCC. So that's my request, to hold that joint meeting between the BCC and the Planning Commission in August of this year at a date certain or identified by staff.
Is that a motion?
I can't
Motion
make
to
a
approve.
motion.
Oh, you can't, okay.
Motion to
I'll make the
approve.
motion. I would ask, make sure that, Mark, that we are not setting a precedent to where we have to do this every time. That was my staff,
Yeah,
you know,
that's my problem with
made
it, too.
that, yeah.
That's my problem with it too, is planning commission knows their role, knows what they're supposed to do, and if they don't do it, and if what happened like it happened last time.
Last time it blew up.
You know, I'm sorry, but, we're all adults. We shouldn't have to mollycoddle the planning commission, they're our appointees. We should not have to do this. One more meeting, we have to add to our agenda. I'm against it because I think that if the planning commission is not doing their job, there's certain members who aren't doing their job, and then they should be removed. And, we've got enough work on our plates already. Another meeting to listen to folks, which we will be glad to do when we have the public meeting on the particular ordinance. And like Commissioner Commander said, this sets a big precedent. Now we're what? We're doing what we said we weren't going to do on some other issues, and we're establishing it just doesn't go right with me.
Commissioner
Actually,
Meadows.
that wasn't my objection.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
my
Okay,
objection.
Sorry
It's
for
okay.
putting words in your mouth.
My objection was sending out notices to everybody, because there again, are we setting a precedent
Well, let me,
that we will have to do that from now on?
Let me
I'm sorry.
make a statement real quick. Some of the people that have contacted me that are property owners on 331, they take the position that they did not know about the previous workshops or public hearings that we had concerning that, mainly because they're either busy, out of town, didn't have access to a computer, don't read the paper. The litany of went on and on. So I was thinking the best way to do it to make sure that these folks that are really right attached to 331 property owners, to at least let them know personally there's going to be another hearing, whether we do it as a joint or if we have a planning commission meeting where they are identified. And I know, you could set it up for everything or end up that way. But in the fairness, I thought it would be a fair thing to do. At least we're not talking about maybe 100 people. But
I know, but you know, everybody stands up and says, "I didn't know anything about this. I was, you know, I didn't." So, you know, that's not really a valid. We've been working on this for how long?
Let me, if you don't
I
mind.
mean, I would like to hear from them.
Let me say, please remember, I said this to the Planning Commission, this is a legislative item. This is not a quasi-judicial. I expressed then some concerns about individual notice for a specific item that you're going to consider, because if we took the position we needed to do that for everybody who's affected by a legislative item, we would be sending out hundreds of thousands of emails every time we have a legislative. That's a legal concern.
Mail.
There's probably a way to do it for a workshop that would, you could say this is a courtesy thing or whatever, but you know, it's not the most comfortable position for me to be in, frankly, because you do, the word precedent is the right word, because there might be some argument later that, well, you gave a personal notice to this particular legislative item, you should have in the next one.
I think
That's
we
my
give the
opinion.
Planning Commission one more chance to hear it and do something with it, and then we're going to advertise a public hearing on it. That's my opinion. I just don't want to do another meeting and drag this thing out. I mean, it's just too much.
And I understand what you're saying, Mr. Chairman, but I mean, we put it in the newspaper. It's, guy from the radio's here. It's on the radio. I think television covers it. It's on our website. If you have an interest in something, if you're going to be affected by something, I would find, and I had a guy tell me, well, I don't read the newspaper. Well, gee whiz, then, you know, go to our website. And if you're concerned, and everybody, I'm sorry, should have known by now that we're looking at standards on 331 for, what, 6 to 8 months now. I'm not objecting to what Bill has to say. If we can do it one time and that be it, well then, but we can't. I'm nervous about setting a precedent.
I understand that, and I respect that. Ms. Harris, did you still want to make a comment? State your name for the record, please.
Suzanne Harris, and I think y'all would be, and I'm on the planning board. I'm telling you, the planning board needs to handle this. Everything that they get mad at the planning board about doesn't need to come back to y'all, or y'all are going to be hearing everything and you can disband the planning board. But there better not ever be a planning board meeting, ever again, that I'm on or any other board, that the chairman calls the whole planning board and the whole planning department to the back room for a conversation. I went back there and said, this is a violation of the Sunshine Law. Believe me, I'm the Sunshine Queen. I will not attend this meeting. I didn't go back there at first until the door opened, and he said, Miss Harris, get in here. I'm sorry, nobody's going to order me to a room like that. I expect y'all to take charge of this. I talked to Larry. I told him if he and Mark would come see me, I wouldn't bring this up publicly. But since that didn't happen, it's coming out publicly. Any chairman that calls their board back in a back room for a conversation has violated the Sunshine Law, and they need to step down.
Thank you. All right. I withdraw my request. I think and the couple people that contacted me concerning that notification, I will personally contact them myself whenever their dates are signed. And that way they'll have that information. If they elect to attend, fine. If they don't, okay.
And two, development is moving north, and so you know this is going to be a constant thing. So you know, everybody else figures out how to be notified of things. So this is something that is going to be happening a lot.
All right, that's all I have. Citizen request, Ms. Bonnie Perry. Okay, come on in. State your name for the record. Confine your comments to 5 minutes, please. Ms. Perry, we have seen the videos and we have seen the photographs that you have presented to the board, so it may or may not be showing up here.
I'm Bonnie Perry. I live at 780 Bay Shore Drive.
Yes, ma'am.
And my first request was if I could show the short video. It's less than a minute.
Oh, well, I know you're talking about the one during the rainfall?
Yes, sir.
We'll give you a minute to show that, Rick. It's turned upside down. I don't think we can get it flipped the other way.
Of course.
course.
But
Well, it doesn't last long, and the whole point of what this is trying to show you is new construction next to my home where the water runs downhill, and according to our planning department and the way that the codes are currently written, you all can't help me in this situation unless we get a change. So I'm here today to make a presentation to ask for you all to look further at that.
okay, is that the crutch of what you want to ask of the board, is that we look at trying to come up with something to
No,
identify those?
I have a proposal.
You do?
Yes.
Okay, move forward then.
Bonnie Perry, 780 Bayshore Drive. I purchased my home 2 years ago on Bayshore Drive. The neighborhood is fairly quiet, dead end, and peppered with ranges of income up and down the street. When we originally purchased our 20-year-old home, we had a small wooden ranch to the west of us and a summer camp that is likely 70 years old to the east of us. As time passed, the neighbors to the west of us decided to tear down their ranch home and divided their property into 2 parcels, built a home on the piece adjacent to us. The home that they have erected is a 2-story home built 10 feet away from the walls of my home. As much as anyone hates to see trees torn down and a new home built 10 feet away from them, honestly, Bob and I were very happy for them and understood that expansions in all neighborhoods are inevitable. It never occurred to us that their success and opportunity would mean a financial burden to us or have a detrimental impact to the stability of our home's most basic foundation. We were told in the beginning that they were being required to bring in 2 feet of soil to meet new floodplain codes. Trees came down, soil came in, and very quickly the progress advanced and their new home was looking nice. Now move your focus to the house next door, us. 2-foot elevation. Where do you think that the water runoff from them in a rain will go? Water does not run uphill. With the first major rain after the roof went on the new construction, their water rolled straight downhill and was stopped by the concrete and stucco of my home. It rolled through my air conditioning unit and out to the bay of my property. My husband went to our neighbor and tried to discuss the need to look at the water runoff between our homes. The neighbor described that he was going to create a swell on the property line that would solve the problem. Because of the height of their new foundation, 2 feet above ours, and the water that had run through our air conditioning unit, we asked for his help in raising our air conditioner in addition to creating that swell. He would have nothing to do with it and stated that we were responsible for our own property. He was not going to pay for my air conditioning issues. Now remind you, my home is a 20-year-old home and has never flooded. My air conditioning unit had never flooded, and this was a brand new air conditioning unit. I could hear my husband and our neighbor and our neighbor's brother, who happens to be the contractor for this project, getting into it outside in very loud voices, and 2-against-1 argument was something that I felt needed to be ended. So I went out and tried to calm the argument and bring it back to a discussion, but that didn't last very long, and my husband and I ended up walking away and putting the garage door down. The thought that he had flooded our air conditioner and felt that it was our problem really bothered me, but I knew I would get over it. We had more rain a few days later, and this time I took a video, the one that you all have just seen, hoping that if they could see the runoff, that they would understand and want to do something about it. I sent copies of the video to both the husband and the wife next door. A few days passed, and I tried again to speak to my neighbor and his brother, the contractor, while they were in the side yard. I pointed out to them that there were no gutters on their side of the roof between our house. And with the steep pitch...
You please wrap up your comments. Yeah, you haven't got to a proposal yet. I mean, you...
The proposal is, in the next paragraph, the reason that you all couldn't help me, I was directed to go to the Planning Council after filing a letter of complaint. My letter of complaint just upset the contractors and made them really dislike me, so it became a battle. The planning department later, after with lots of phone calls and trying to track them down and not understanding the system, by the time I got to Sarah Commander, finally I got some responses from the planning department. I got really very little responses prior. When I got to Sarah Commander, the phone started to ring. I started to get some responses, but I had already written that letter of complaint against the contractors. The planning department later came back to me and told me that they couldn't help me, that what I was describing was a civil matter. That the reason it was a civil matter was because there's an exemption in your codes, and it's code number 5-06-02, which is an exemption that reads that the following development activities are exempt from stormwater management requirements, except that steps to control erosion and sedimentation must be taken for all development. The very first exemption in there is the construction of a single-family or duplex residential dwelling unit and accessory structures on a single parcel. Are you kidding me? You're not going to do anything to control erosion or sedimentation that might impact a single-family or duplex residential dwelling unit. We've got homes across the street from us that are trailers. These are people that do not have financial means to fight $1 million home going up next to them and to be able to deal with the water runoff the way that I have been able to, or to have the energy to fight this. Because your codes are written the way they are, the contractor stood in his backyard or in their backyard just a few weeks ago and told me that they have done nothing illegal. Everything they have done is by the code, and they're absolutely right.
They are.
And you've told me that I've got a civil matter, and
Yes.
I need to take this to court to get an attorney to represent me. I don't have money to hire an attorney to go represent me. I have to build a retaining wall to protect my home. And the people across the street in those trailers would not have the money to get an attorney to represent them. And if you got an attorney, you'd lose because your codes exclude them. They're perfectly legal in everything they do. It's not morally right, it's not ethically right, but it's legal. And unless you change that exemption, they can get away with it. As a result of what they've done, with further pictures, another video that I sent today, Lewis, would you show the last
We
video,
saw it,
please?
yeah.
I saw it.
Let me interrupt you, Ms. Perry, because I have been working with Ms. Perry, and this is a problem, especially in my district, because that's where a lot of the older homes are. And 20 years ago, houses were built on the dirt, on the ground, just flat. And now, because of new building codes from the state and all, houses these have to be raised. And time after time, neighborhoods, for example, are flooding entire houses on that they back up to. I'm thinking of Shore Drive, for example. It's happening in her neighborhood. I would like for us to take a look at this code and see if there's something. I don't want to burden someone building a new home, but there again, we've got to protect the people that already have houses, some kind of way, and I don't know how we do it, but I would like for us to look into it.
In
Mr.
this
Jones, can you-
particular case, the resolution of it would have been less than $5,000.
Okay.
Mr. Jones, can you look into this?
We'll be glad
Give us
to,
a-
and look at
I
what
would
possible
appreciate
resolutions are available and what.
Yeah. And I also have a lot of that. It's lots of record, and
Yeah.
it's platted lots of record, and they're all over. They're all over my district and everywhere. And I've been talking to the public works people, and yeah, one of the policies that we have that we need to look at, which I've put on the June 10th agenda, is perhaps requiring lots of record, if they build a house, to have some kind of drainage retention area, whether it's a swale or a whatever it is. But we're getting people building out to the very end of their property. They're building 20,000 square foot houses. The roof drains are, they're 5 foot from the neighbor, and they're so it is definitely a problem, and
And we have
We
one more
need to talk
problem that
about
I'd
it.
like to point out, is we need to make sure as new homes are going in, that they have the proper silt fencing. Is that the black plastic stuff? Because on Forest Drive, when we had this massive rain we had recently, I had a problem over there anyway with a drainage ditch. And I was out there last week, and they were building a house directly across. They didn't have silt fencing up one, and our right-of-way is now, we have solid sand from this building site. So there again, we need to have, and I know we're limited staff, but now that's a problem we're gonna have to solve because of all of this dirt is now in, and we can't drain properly on Forest Drive.
Okay.
The second 1 minute video that I sent this morning,
Yes, ma'am.
I sent only to you.
Oh,
Did
really?
you pass it to the other people here?
No, ma'am, I can't, no, I thought you sent it to everybody.
I did not. It's only 1 minute. May I please offer that?
That's the chairman's decision.
She can send it to us. We've already directed staff to look into it, see if we can come with some measures to try and abate some of this runoff.
I will
So,
send it to Larry. And
Send it to Larry, because sending it back and forth to us is not, that's taboo.
Yeah.
She'll have
I will
to,
send it to Larry.
Larry, and he can
it.
send it.
The purpose of that video and what I wanted you all to gather from that was I had sent to the planning department the building department this last Thursday in preparation for tonight, a letter that read, please look at the attached pictures and then come take a look at the advancement of this project next door. Where do you think that the downspout is draining? Where is the runoff from the roof without gutters on the east side of the house flowing? Notice where the bottom step stops and how it dams any runoff from that downspout from having any opportunity of flowing anywhere but straight downhill to the side of my house. Notice the solid white fence now going up between our properties and in no way meant to solve the problem of water flow from their home. Notice the sand in the pictures carried over onto my property prior to installation of their white fence and no silt fence to retain the sand. None of that sand was on my property prior to construction. None of the overflow pipe on my hot water heater, which did flood last week, or the pipe to the dryer, blah, 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 blah. We'll be speaking to county commissioners this next Tuesday and would like for you to give you the opportunity to come and review this matter prior by speaking to me. I would appreciate meeting with you when you come to look at the project. Thank you for your assistance. Notice I asked them specifically to come and speak with me. They came and they met with the contractors. I heard them out there laughing, getting in their car and getting ready to leave. Nobody got back to me with any feedback.
Okay, Ms. Perry, boards give action on what we expect staff to do, so we're moving on. Thank you very much.
Didn't you also send it to Lewis?
I sent it to Lewis and
Okay, Lewis,
and you.
will you forward it on? Thank you.
Thank you.
And here's copies of the pictures.
Yeah, put them, get them this way.
All right, is there any additional public comments? Seeing none, we're going to take about a 10-minute recess. Let's come back to order. Moving into our legislative items. Mac, you presenting?
Yes, sir, I will. Matt Carpenter for the Planning Department. And Commissioner, since we've got a room full of folks, we have two agenda items that we have a request to continue on. If we could please address those first. Those are under the QJ item. Item number 5, the 38 Resort Subdivision PUD. We have a request from the owner or the applicant, and staff concurs with this request to continue this project to our very next special meeting on May 20th. Yes, ma'am. To the 20th of May at 5 o'clock in this location.
Okay.
Is it required to be at 5, or can be part of the group that starts at 4?
This one could actually start at 4 o'clock.
Okay.
Well, let me ask you this. How do you notify people? You know, there's a sign on the property that says the hearing is
It's today.
today. So how do you notify people that it's been
We will request that the sign be updated, but because this is made in a public meeting to a date certain, there's no additional public notification required by our land development code. But we do customarily request that the sign be updated with a new date and time.
What's the reason for the delay?
Ma'am.
We have a flooding issue in the neighborhood, and we want to make sure that this is not part of it. Even though this project has not begun construction, it is the closest project to the source of the problem that is before this particular body.
Says we'd like to get a handle on the drainage in that basin as well.
I need a second.
You did? Second.
Motion a second. Public comment, come forward and state your name for the record. Gentleman, ma'am, you can go ahead.
Thank you. Ken Delo, live over there right behind what we're talking about, the 38 development. Moving this till later is fantastic if there's going to be a consideration for, we got the plans, they mailed them to everybody, certified, and there's retention plans and things like that. We know that the rain that happened is out of the ordinary, but we'd love to see a relook at the plans, obviously, before this gets pushed through. We're not opposed necessarily, and I don't want to speak for everyone. I'm talking about the people directly around me. We don't want to oppose a development. It's great for our little community, but we are very concerned that maybe the engineering that went into this maybe isn't as applicable now, knowing what we know. So I don't know what's the forum for that. Is that just bring it up at the continuation of this?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's the reason for the continuation, is to give staff time to look at that.
Yeah. Okay, and then any other issues that we had, we just bring them there as well?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Ma'am, come forward, state your name for the record.
Elizabeth Randall. I live at 54 Flounder Street. This is a second home. I've owned the house going on 33 years. This is the first time in the history of every hurricane that's ever come through, every drop of rain that's ever fallen, that I have had one drop of water and my house flooded. I still have water, and we're going on 2 weeks. I am directly abutting the property that you're talking about. His water from that lake, pond, whatever you want to call it back there, is still back there. They have pumped over 100,000 gallons of water off my property, and I've still got water. I'm not objecting to the project itself, but the developer has said that the county will not give him permission to go in there and give us any kind of relief. There are 2 houses that directly are affected by this standing water on that property. If we get much rain, because the water table can't absorb it, if we get much more rain, we're going to flood again. There's no silt fencing. There is no nothing. And if you could see, and I would invite every one of you, come over and take a look. I had a gorgeous backyard. Everything in it is nothing but muck, and it's up to my knees in certain areas. That's not acceptable. He may have a great engineering plan, but it needs to be relooked because unusual things are happening, the weather patterns are changing, and it's going to continue to get worse. And I didn't have flood insurance because I've never been told I'm not in a flood zone. You're in a preferred risk area, but you're not in a flood zone. Mm-hmm. And after all those years. Yeah. So everything that I've lost is coming out of pocket, and I've been retired 5 years. And I don't, I really don't want to be a bad neighbor. I'd like to be a good neighbor, but give the owner permission to go in there and put up some kind of fencing or put in some kind of pumps or whatever and get the rest of that water off his property, because it is sitting directly on top of a clay and an asphalt tennis court that was back behind there, formerly owned by White Cliffs many, many years ago. And the water can't go anywhere. It's not going through that asphalt, and it just sits.
Can't they pump that off their own profits, their property? They
He
don't
said
have-
that
Oh, he
excuse
can-
me, the board would not give him permission to do anything on the property. I don't
Well,
understand that.
No, it's their property. They can pump.
As long as they have an appropriate place for the discharge.
Yeah,
And
they could pump it in a truck. We're pumping it into a truck.
Okay.
They could pump it in a truck, into a truck.
That is what Mr. Stafford finally told him, God love him, and I can't tell you what kind of public works department you have. They are absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I would have floated back to Atlanta.
Are
by
they
this
still
time.
here? Is Wilmer still here? Are they around?
I think they.
I mean, they were pumping
I'll
after
get with-
midnight. I mean, it
I
was.
know. I will make sure that Wilmer gets with the developer, owner of that property, and
Well,
lets
he was
them
here
know.
a moment ago.
And lets them
He's
know.
here now.
that- Yeah.
I knew he had permission to do it, but
Yeah.
it wasn't done. I'm saying something needs to be done right now, tonight, tomorrow.
Can we give
protect
him-
us so that if we get more rain, and it is coming,
Can
that we don't
uh,
have this situation
yeah.
again.
Larry, you take care of it?
We'll certainly do
Well,
our best.
here's the owner. Yeah, it's your property. You can go on and pump water off of it into you may have to pump it into a tank on a truck like we're doing at Flounder because there's nowhere to pump it. But you can do that. Yeah. Yeah.
You do know
State your
that,
name, sir. State your name for the
I'm
record.
Vic Anderson. I represent the developer on the 38 Resort
What's the name
project.
again?
Vic Anderson. Yes, sir. Of course, we were out there with Public Works, and she's exactly right. They did a magnificent job. We gave them permission to pump up on our property, and they were concerned by pumping on our property that it would go somewhere else.
Yeah.
But guess what? I have pictures. They pumped that entire lake almost dry, and it soaked right through our property. It didn't go anywhere else. So after they've done that, I think most of the water's gone. Our development order will allow us to go in and take that clay bed out, which is part of the problem, and the asphalt under it. Then 9,000 yards of fill comes back in. A retention pond is built there, and it maintains a 100-year storm plan. So when we come back, we'll go over all that, but I want you to know we are concerned and are addressing it.
Yeah, and if there is water standing back on your property like she suggested there was, you can get rid of. She says there's water there now. Can you get rid of that?
Yes, ma'am, we can.
Okay.
And you
That'd
will?
be great.
And you will?
Yes, sir.
That'd be great.
Understand, that whole thing is a watershed.
Yep.
It comes from north. It's
Yep.
trying to get to Draper Lake.
Yeah.
All of us built houses and things on there, stopping it, the road network and all that. So it's an area-wide program. That catch basin caught a lot of it and protected other property owners, but it affected those in the immediate area. And we haven't bothered the property. We originally bought it.
Right, right. And that's one of the things that we have to look at. We have to look at the whole basin and figure out, how everything's working and how we can help. So thank you for your cooperation on that.
Hang on.
You have to talk to the chairman.
Come forward, then.
Like I said, I'm from Atlanta, and I've been here for weeks now, and I need to go home for a little bit. When will this come back up again so that I would know?
May 20th.
20th.
May 20th.
Which is
Yes,
next
ma'am.
Tuesday, I think.
Ma'am, did you have something?
It'll be in, no, it'll be down here.
Be down here, yeah.
State your name for the record, please.
My name's Cindy Frank, and I live at 40 Flounder Street, directly next door to Betty Randall. And I live here full-time with my husband and 2 boys, and lived in that house for 17 years and have never had flooding like this. So my concern is, I'm not opposing the building, but what he is proposing is building up. My property will then sit under him, and we'll still have an issue with water coming in. And we had 8 inches in my house, and the backyard where I have an office and a laundry room was knee deep in water. So again, I'm not opposing, but something definitely needs to be done with drainage, not only back on that property, which I know, they just bought the property and it's been
Right.
like this for a long time.
Yeah.
But also from the front of the house, from 30A, it washed in from 30A where Palmetto Healthcare used to be. Totally took out that driveway and
Yeah.
just was coming in the front door also.
That's right at that confluence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and there was a drainage ditch put on flounder. It's probably been, I don't know, 2-3 years possibly, but it's not deep enough. Any
Right.
small amount of rain fills that ditch and the water just sits.
And I'm meeting with Public Works again on Thursday to go over this and a couple of other areas that we're having this issue, and hopefully we'll come up with something.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. I'll get you next, sir.
My name's Anita Hallman, and I have 2 lots up from Betty Randall, and I'm on the highest apex in that subdivision, and the water from that fill came all the way up to the bottom step of my porch. So I'm not sure that they've significantly planned for what's going on, and to further the problem, they're going to add an entrance. From what I understand, I did not receive any sort of notification about this development. I don't have any of the plans, and I did not hear.
Can you send her, Matt, can you send her the plans, give him your information?
So the entrance to the back off behind Flounder Street is going to directly impact my house back there, which I had no idea about. I thought they were all going to exit on 30A if they can, but I definitely don't believe that the runoff has been adequately researched, and I would like to find those plans. So.
Well, can you be here on the 20th to address?
No, because I just spent 2 weeks helping flooding houses here. So again, the continuance is a great burden for people who don't have the opportunity to come back, because we had planned, as I stayed just for this meeting, and then we have the continuance. But
Sir, come forward. State your name for the record.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Steve Hall. My firm is Hall & Runnels. Represent the developer on this and other projects. Just a bit of information. We did get a call from the county engineer earlier this afternoon requesting that we agree to table to a time certain. We had been considering it based on input from planning staff, but when the county engineer called and said he wanted to talk about drainage issues next Monday, we agreed that we would continue and go to work with him, do the best we can to do our part in the overall situation there. I think you'll find that we've been trying to make sure that we can accommodate both the regulations and the neighbors as best we can.
Good, thank you. Ms. Randall and Cindy, is that okay? You indicated that you've been here a couple of weeks helping out, and you got to get back. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. And you were requesting that we move it to the 10th of June. Would that help better?
I suggested that they may help moving it to June 10th so that we could get all the issues looked at, and then the people that need to get back home could possibly come back. But if you can't come back, then
If you can move it until then, but in the meantime, if the developer can be required to put up some type of silt fencing back there and get that water off his property.
okay, can we? Well,
Mr. Hall, how's that date sound to you?
yeah. Does that work? The June 10th meeting, first of all.
Mr. Chairman, we were really hoping that we could move forward on the special meeting on the 20th, and that's the approval that I have from my client, who's also out of town, the primary representative. So I don't know. Obviously, if we get to the meeting with the county engineer on Monday, and there's some things we just can't work out, we'll have to address that. But at this point, we kind of agreed
to continue it to Tuesday.
To the special meeting hearing. We'll do all we can to address the situation between now and then.
Well, you still gonna have the same issue with those people.
Well,
can't
yeah,
come.
I think
You're
that.
gonna have the same issue.
I'm sitting here trying to think a little bit, but one of the things you could do is open the table the motion to continue right now, open the quasi-judicial hearing, go ahead and take these folks' testimony, and then.
But it's going to be hard for them to respond because they won't know what the issues are. What if we moved it to the May? Isn't there a second meeting in May? It's at the Funiac, but it's May 27th, the day after Memorial Day.
It's going to be in the morning. It's
going to be in the morning. Okay. Well, I would. because, this is a very unusual situation, and instead of, push it through, if we could continue it till June the 10th, I think that we could flesh out an awful lot of issues, and then the folks could come back, because this is their homes. This is a serious thing. So I'd like to move that we move it to the June 10th hearing down here.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, sir. June 10th.
Vic Anderson again. I just want to remind everybody that we did have a stormwater plan designed per your code. We're doing some extra stuff on it. Just with the scrutiny from this, it's been approved by planning and zoning. It's been stamped by our engineers. It's also been approved by your engineers in the county. So we're trying to cooperate, but it does put a burden on us, pushing us out. We're going to miss the summer by doing that with our development.
Well, and we understand that, but we are under a state of emergency.
Yes, ma'am.
And this is one of the areas that there's still standing water on Flounder and, what's the name of that street? Flounder and Porpoise, yeah. If it weren't such a dire situation, I wouldn't do that, because, yeah, you're right, but,
I just want to make sure you're not making us design to a 200-year storm event, because nobody else is. And that's what happened, and we're designed to a 100-year storm event.
you're in a closed base. Are you in a
Yes, ma'am,
closed basin? Yeah.
We'd be glad to pop off, give us a place. That's
Yes.
what we'll talk about with the engineers, but
Right.
right now, we're containing what we're required to do.
Oh,
on site.
absolutely. But let us
Okay.
look at the whole thing, and we don't want to infringe on you, but let us look at the whole thing and see if we can't come up with something.
Oh,
that-
we want to help, but we can't
Yeah.
solve that neighborhood problem, trust me, on our site.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, and you may not be able to on your site, but we may be
If
able to.
there's a global thing, we'll participate in it.
Yeah,
Sure.
that'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Mac.
Yes, sir. Matt Carpenter for the Planning Department. Item number 6 in the quasi-judicial section of our agenda. We're requesting to continue that so it can be heard at the Planning Commission meeting, which was rescheduled from last week to this Thursday, the 15th. That will allow us to have that hearing before coming back on the 20th.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, if we could go back to the top of our planning agenda, this is tab K in your book, item number 1. Our first item is to request direction regarding the DEO letter dated April 24, 2014, with regard to the ordinance 2014-06, the Sandestin DRA E2 change DO amendment. Commissioners, you have a copy of this letter in your packet. We received it from the Department of Economic Opportunity in response to our rendering of this particular E2 change, Sandestin Chapter 380 Development Order Amendment. They've advised us of the tables and supporting documentation submitted with that, which we got from the developer, were not legible, and thus it did not meet the definition of being properly rendered under the appropriate Florida Administrative Code section. They wrote us this letter, and they said we may want to consider rescinding that ordinance and readopting it and resubmitting it for their review and approval. But effectively what this means right now is, even though DEO has said we tentatively agreed that this change would be considered an E2 change, and we will accept a review of that through the E2 change process. It is not approved until it's been properly rendered, according to the statute and the Florida Administrative Code. So that's where we are right now. The Osprey Point Development Order is not authorized because it was subject to this E2 change being approved. So we're back to needing some direction about what to do.
Mr. Chair, before we go forward, I'm going to have to recuse myself again on this.
Of course.
Same issue.
I guess I don't understand why it wasn't legible. I don't get it.
Why it wasn't legible?
Apparently, the documents that were sent in by the applicant.
We used the submittal from the
I got you,
applicant
Dana.
and attached that to the ordinance, and that's what got sent forward.
When they were not legible.
And let me add one thing. Since we received the letter, we are now under a preliminary injunction from the court to submit legible copies. So we'll.
And we have done that.
And we have, I believe,
Planning staff
accomplished
has
that. So
submitted legible copies so they can see what it said.
now,
But
that-
because those copies were not the ones attached to the ordinance that was before you to adopt, that's not considered the same thing.
So I would suggest, my suggestion would be to do exactly what DEO said, consider rescinding and resubmitting.
Rescind it, resubmit it, and then re-adopt it.
Yes, and if you direct staff to do that, then we'd start that process.
That would require particular advertising.
Yes, sir.
As it did originally.
It's just like a regular ordinance adoption.
I'll make that motion if I'll get a second.
Okay, hang on. I'll need a motion and a second before we'll take your discussion.
You got it. Motion.
Motion and a second. Okay, I think Alan has his hand up first, so come forward, state your name for the record.
Are we supposed to be hearing stuff after?
Yeah, for the record, Alan Osborne, it's not just what was submitted to the state was illegible. If you go in your agenda and go online and go look, what was advertised to the public was illegible. So what was advertised is exactly what was submitted to the state, illegible copies. That's why you should rescind it, because how in the world could we be on notice with illegible stuff that was advertised, or I would have shown up. The second thing is, as I've talked to Mr. Davis about, there were things that were in that attachment to the staff package that had nothing to do with the E2 change. It wasn't a clean ordinance, because there was stuff put in there that had nothing to do with it, and we've asked that over and over again. And the last thing is this. Not only should you rescind the ordinance, you should rescind the development order, because the development order was predicated on the state accepting that ordinance and it being passed. So it's not been properly advertised to the public, it's not been properly heard, and wouldn't be entitled to a development order yet. So the development order was really issued in error because they didn't have the answer back from the state yet that it was okay. So that development order should be rescinded also.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Matthews. State your name for the record.
Dana Matthews for Sandestin Development, LLC. This board took action on March 21st to deny my client the opportunity to process a building permit application for Osprey Point based on the development order that was issued by the county on February 6th. As a result of that action, we filed suit against the county seeking injunctive relief and mandamus relief. That case is pending before Judge Wells. We had a preliminary injunction hearing on Friday, May 2nd. And at that hearing, Judge Wells granted our injunctive relief and told the county that they had to accept and process our application for the building permit, which was submitted that afternoon. Also at the hearing, this letter came up. And I want to make sure y'all get the background on this. Before you approve the E2 change, which is this ordinance is all about, that the applicant had to go to the Department of Environmental Opportunity, DEO, and seek their comments on whether or not this would be approved or not approved. Remember, the E2 change was a mathematical clerical. Instead of a 15, it had a 10. Instead of a 0, a 5. It was a transposing error back in 202. The county reviewed the entire E2 application for several months, unanimously approved and recommended it approval. The DEO approved it by a letter dated in October of 2013. The county and the DEO had the application request for the E2 change, which was from Dean Burgess and all his exhibits. DEO approved it, the county approved it, and then you approved the ordinance. In the order of transmittal of that ordinance, Don't ask me how this happened. Whoever in the county transmitted it to DEO, there's 2 exhibits to that ordinance, Exhibit A and Exhibit B. Exhibit A was Dean Burgess's cover letter to the county seeking the E2 change and 6 attachments within that letter, 3 of which apparently were not legible when the county sent them to the DEO after they'd approved the ordinance. This came up in the hearing in front of Judge Wells, and the county was trying to make position, this was the county, one of the county's arguments, only one, is, well, Judge, you can't grant the injunction because we got this letter from the DEO that says that we have these illegible copies, and you might want to consider, rescinding the ordinance and adopting a new one. That way, they wouldn't have to process our building permit. Judge Wells wasn't buying any of it. He got it. Mark, this is, I mean, this sounds to me like somebody just needs to provide legible copies to the DEO. And I said, Judge, that's exactly right. And as part of the judge's order that he signed, and he ordered on May 2nd, he told the county to immediately provide legible copies. When those copies were not sent by the county to the DEO, last week I went and we called DEO, found exactly which ones that they were talking about. We made the copies, we delivered them to Mr. Davis' office, and we copied DEO just to be on the safe side. And we said, okay, per judge's order, here they are, send them over to the DEO. So there's no reason to have to rescind this ordinance and readopt it. It's exactly what Mr. Osborne would like you to do, and take the position that the development order is not in effect. That is not true in our position. And if you rescind this ordinance and schedule it for another further adoption, and also rescind our development order, then we're going to be back in court again. And I think that's not a good use of taxpayers' money. I mean, I was at the hearing. Mark can tell you that what I'm telling you is true.
Well, 2 things. One, as I just mentioned to you during the break, we had not resubmitted. I had not received the written order yet. We had gone back and forth about the written order. I was gone at the end of the week. I understand it was entered Friday or Thursday. So, and I understand also we have complied with the written order by conveying over to DEO now. So to say we didn't comply with the order, we did comply.
I didn't say when I said you hadn't complied with it by the time I sent you all the documents.
I always comply with court orders, but let me also say I do recommend rescinding and readoption. I do not recommend pulling back the development order. I think that's a substantive step that would require a whole new set of hearings that I can't recommend doing that without those whole new set of hearings. But I do believe, based on this letter, it would be a better practice after we advertise and go through the advertising process to rescind and readopt. Again, nobody disagrees this is a clerical error. The E2 changes is in order. I don't think anybody in the world is going to disagree with that.
Again, that's not what the DO said you had to do, and the judge obviously didn't think it. He thinks that just send them the copies that they can read.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Yeah.
Sir, come forward, state your name for the record.
That's right.
Tom Becknell. The Osprey Point development that we're talking about has been pending before the county for 2 years and 4 months. We have been trying to get a development order for that long. After having met every requirement that the county has come up with, and there was never one list, it was an add-on to an add-on to an add-on. We finally exhausted every objection that the county came up with in order to get through the development order process. The fact that the county made a mistake and inadvertently sent an illegible copy to the state should not be held against the developer of the project. Every time we go through this, it costs a great deal of money. Last summer, we were ready to receive a development order. We had met the requirements. And one of the attorneys for the staff wrote an opinion based upon this error that we're talking about. It was a clerical error. It was a transposition of 2 numbers. The surface area of the parcel never changed. No one ever argued that it changed. Someone just made a mistake when they wrote the numbers down. But based upon that, the attorney wrote an opinion saying we had to completely redesign the project. We were captured under the comp plan, and we went through 6.5 months of redesign. We lost the building. We lost the last summer selling season, and we complied only to find out later that he was wrong, and he wrote a retraction. We chose not to go back to the original plan and add the building back because we would have had to go back through TRC. And we were trying to get finished in time to go to market this summer. We got back through the process. We got a development order. Mr. Matthews just explained what happened after that. We were required to do an E2 change to correct the Scrivener's error, which we did, and you approved. Now we're being told, well, because the copy is illegible of 2 of the exhibits. There are legible copies everywhere. There's no argument about that. We may have to start over again and lose this summer selling season. Somewhere in the process, there has to be equity brought to bear. We have attended, I can't even count the number of meetings with the county, trying to get to the point that we could introduce to the public a new project in Walton County. And it's amazing to me how difficult it seems to be to do that. Everyone knows there are jobs needed in Walton County. Everyone knows we need new projects and new growth. And yet the attitude seems to be do whatever you can to hold them up, delay them, or stop them entirely. Now, we have done everything humanly possible. And I think Mr. Davis just said the documents have now been received and sent. The judge's order was not to rescind the development order, to send the legible documents to the state and accept our application for a building permit. We filed for the building permit that day, and we were hoping that the county would do its part and submit the legible copies to the state immediately. In our conversations with the state, that's all they're waiting on, is for you to send them the copies. If that's now been done, they're going to render the E2 change, and it's finished. It's as simple as that. As soon as they get the legible copies, they're going to render the E2 change, and that is finished. Why open the door and start over? I know it would make Mr. Osborne happy. It would probably make the SOA happy to try to put us through this meat grinder for the umpteenth time. But it's just not equitable, and it's not reasonable. So I ask your consideration tonight to let us bring this project to completion now so that we can take advantage of our summer selling season. Otherwise, we lose another year. It's as simple as that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Davis,
Yes, ma'am.
I want to make sure that I'm following right along. I have the letter here from DEO, and it says, the purpose of this letter to advise you that because of the attachments to the ordinance were not legible, they have discontinued their review.
Yes, ma'am.
If, in fact, new copies were sent to them, do we have word from them that they will now take those?
I think Mac may be in a better position.
Now, I want to hear from staff right now.
We actually provided those copies several weeks ago, just for clarification. They have been provided again. I was at that hearing with Judge Wells. He did not direct the county to accept and approve a building permit. He merely said, while this problem with this particular letter that came up is being worked out, can the county accept the building permit application for review and at least start the review process? And he was very specific. He says, I will not direct the county to approve this. That's not what I'm doing. I'm directing the county to accept the application and at least start the review. And we have done that.
But to answer,
My question.
I'm sorry, let me just make sure we're clear. To answer Commissioner Commander's question, I don't know that we have direction from DEO that they will automatically start the review process again. I don't know.
No, and it's my professional opinion that that is not the case. Now, they gave us the, I'm sorry.
No, I think what everybody's forgetting is when we did the E2 change, that's what we thought we were doing, was an E2 change. And somehow, some way, who knows? They stated in that hearing, it's in the minutes, that they were not going to get a development order. This was just an E2 change. This was not a development order. Unbeknownst to us, next thing we know, it's a development order. So, semantics, this is unfair, this is blah, blah, blah. At some point, we have to backtrack and say, we approved an E2 change. They went, and got a DO. And so we said, well, hold on, guys. You haven't had your compliance hearing, which is what everything is based on. So I think let's not forget where we started on this. We want a compliance hearing. We don't want any DOs issued until the compliance hearing is held. They agreed to that. And then now we have a DO, and now they're suing us because, various and sundry things, because we won't issue them a building permit on a DO that really should never have been issued in the first place, and that, in my opinion, we never voted to approve. We approved an E2 change.
And Commissioner, let me say two things. One, all we're really asking you to do is to tell us, do you want us to go through the process of starting the rescission and readoption? The court order, frankly, has nothing to do with that.
Right. I call the question on the motion.
That's all we're
But I
asking.
do have one more. How long will that take? How long will this take?
Well, point of information, because I can answer this commander's question.
I call the question on the
calls
motion.
for the question.
Let's have a vote to
The question's on.
Well,
Yeah.
I can't vote until my question's answered. I'm sorry.
Well,
I mean, I've just got a question I need
Yeah.
to answer.
Mr. Chairman, point of information, please.
I'm sorry, Dana.
no, wait, no, This is
We call for the
Robert
questions.
Rules of Orders. I've called the question. Let's vote on it.
Okay,
I moved that we rescind it and rehear it.
Actually, you can't move, I'm sorry, I don't mean to, and I don't want to get caught up on the legalese, but you can't actually rescind without going through a notice process. So
Okay,
what I
well,
would, our
that we notice to
request
rescind.
is you
Right.
give us permission to go through the process.
Right, that we give them permission to go through the process.
That's a different motion.
This is,
So they can't call for a question, but that's a new motion. You have to open it to discussion.
Okay.
no, there was a motion
was
and a
different.
second. There was a motion and a second.
But-
I made the motion that we rescind the approval.
You instruct us.
And that we rehear it. Now, if we have to do what he says to rehear it, granted, yes, that's what my motion means, is that we rescind it. It must go through his process. So it is, in effect, the same motion. I mean, it means the same thing. It's just the second step in the process of rescinding the motion. So, this whole thing this gives us a chance to go back and do what we originally wanted to do, and that is not approve any development orders or give out any building permits before the compliance hearing. That was the whole purpose of this.
And please understand, I'm not taking the position, I don't want anybody to misunderstand this. This action in any way affects the current development order or the submitted.
Right, exactly. It doesn't affect, they've figured that out. But what I'm saying is, because there is a DEO thing that says that you recommends that we rescind it, I say that's what we do.
Okay, that's your motion.
That's my motion.
We have
There
a
was
second?
Yeah.
I originally seconded it. My second can stand, but my vote will be no. So I don't know how you handle that. You can second something and then vote against it.
You
right?
can move for something and vote
Sure.
against it.
Yeah.
All right, we have a
Okay.
motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 All
Nay.
opposed, nay, nay.
And my reason is, and I want it on the record, is because my questions were not answered. I still had questions that I need answered by our attorney. And until I get those answers.
Sure.
Yeah, a 2-2 vote means it fails, so we
Yeah.
have to go forward.
So we're back to where we started. So now you can ask your question.
Well, here's what I think legally. Let me-
That was 2-2.
Let me say what I think legally happens if we don't go forward. If DEO and MAC, I think, believes this may happen, decides not to render the E2 change, in other words, just by submitting the legible copies.
We're the ones that have to render it.
Right. So, well, I mean, that's right. We have, that, or not accept it and continue their review, I guess is a better way of putting it. Then I suspect they will do something else to require us to do that, but that's.
And right now, they have not recognized our submittal as being properly rendered.
Right.
And therefore, they have suspended their review once they
And
came
they
to
may.
that
So
conclusion.
we have an incomplete, and they can't do anything with it.
And they may, it's possible they may
Okay.
accept the copies and can start the review again. That's just, my understanding, Mac's opinion is that will not happen.
And why not, can I ask you a question now? Why not? Why don't you think they will accept the,
Because those were not the original documents entered into evidence supporting the ordinance when you took the action to
Yeah.
approve it.
Yeah.
They're copies, but it's not the original that was recorded
thing
and
is-
submitted.
And I'm using the word mucked up. To be specific, we need to go back and do it over again and do it right.
I believe Robert Rules of Order says that while you're still discussing the issue, you can change your vote if need be, correct?
The person who voted in the, a person who voted in the majority.
We have no majority.
Well, because it failed, the folks
You
who
would be
voted
in the
against
majority.
would be considered the majority, yes.
So you
Can move to reconsider at the same meeting.
Which means,
But we don't use Robert's rules.
well, we should.
I could make another
Yeah,
motion.
we do.
No, we don't.
You want me to make another motion?
You can
Okay.
certainly do that.
Or are we ready for another motion?
Yes, ma'am, we are.
My motion would be to rescind the E2 change, re-advertise it, and rehear it according to the proper procedures.
I'll second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. You want, come on,
I call the question.
hang on a minute.
I call the question. The question's been called, we can vote on it. We don't need more testimony we don't need more testimony.
I have to
This
honor
is-
that,
Yeah, we
Mr.
don't.
Matthews.
Pardon me?
I have to honor her call of question.
I call the
And you
que-
wonder why we moved to recuse on impartiality.
Call the
The thing I
question.
find incredulous is that we've talked to DEO. They can't even, they testified in the hearing in front of Judge Wells that they
Call on
did
the-
not
there's a
even
call
know
on
what
the
documents
question.
were.
There's a
Dana.
call on the question now. There's a call on the question.
I don't have any paperwork to that effect. If I had anything, but I don't.
Well,
You know,
To what
the
effect?
All right, we got a motion on the floor and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Let's move on.
So we'll bring back at the next meeting the start of the process.
start the process. Okay. And my question was, how long will it take? A month?
The regular adoption process.
Our normal
Like-
ordinance adoption process.
And I'd like to make a comment too. That just because I call the question on an issue and I don't want to hear attorneys argue until 10 o'clock at night doesn't mean I'm biased or prejudiced.
Thank you. All right, Mac.
Okay, moving right along here. Our next item is an announcement of the special BCC meeting 1 week from today in this room at 4 p.m. To hear our legislative and quasi-judicial items that have been advertised for that particular agenda. That's merely a reminder announcement. Moving on to our legislative items, the first item we have for you today is the land clearing activities within Coastal Dune Lake Protection Zone Ordinance. And this is an adoption hearing.
Okay. Any public comments? Yes, sir. Come forward. State your name for the record.
My name is Mike Klein. I'm a contractor. I have a client with a lot in the Coastal Dune Lake Protection Zone. I've been trying for 8 weeks to get a review through the planning department, and I have continually been delayed. I have been in conversation with the planning department for the last 4 weeks I was told 4 weeks ago that my project was approved and moved on to building for review and approval. That was not the case. I was only at the county offices today when I found out that there are some changes to the ordinances in Chapter 4. My client or myself has never been advised what these changes are and how they affect our property. And I'd like to ask for postponement of this until I get some type of clarification as to how these ordinances affect my client's property.
I can speak to that. He's talking about the clearing permit doesn't affect the coastal dune lake protection zone at all. The coastal dune lake protection zone is a part of the comprehensive plan that you can't get a variance from. There's 9 standards. You have to comply with them. His application is into the planning department and engineering and legal to determine how they have the right to build a house, but they have to comply with this, with as close to the standards as they can. The clearing permit is merely to let the county be one of the people who realizes that people are building on these coastal dune lake lots. And when they come in for the clearing permit, that's when our staff is notified. And that's what the clearing permit is all about. It's just to notify staff that there's somebody out there removing wetlands, they've got a permit, all that kind of thing. It's really just for us to be in the loop. So it really doesn't have anything to do with his particular property. His thing is, there's a meeting tomorrow, we're meeting on it, we're going to resolve the issues. So I don't think it's germane to hold up this particular ordinance for his issue.
I appreciate that clarification, but I might add that Chapter 4 of the Land Development Code was revised in March of 2014. My application has been before the county for 8 weeks, and I'm frustrated that the county doesn't have clear direction on how to interpret these changes in the code. I know of other properties in that area that have been approved and permitted, and it seems as though there's no clear, precise method of reviewing these lots and approving them. I understand the big picture. There's a lot of issues here about what can be done and cannot be done, but it just seems to me that there needs to be a more precise, clear policy so that landowners know how these ordinances affect their property. And they seem to be applied and interpreted differently based on the lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. Our next item is item number 2, and this is an amendment to our comprehensive plan, the comprehensive plan mixed-use acreage criteria ordinance. And this also is an adoption hearing.
Is there any public comments? Mr. Osborne.
For the record, Alan Osborne. Yeah, I'm unclear on some of these changes to coastal center for the acreage types, because if a development's already been issued under the permit of coastal center, well, they have to meet the requirements of what they got issued to develop on. For example, there's places in this county where coastal center permits have been pulled, but all the types of land uses that are required in coastal center have not been adopted by the developer. So if there's a change to it, it may be a way out of having to comply with what you originally applied for. There were rules set when you applied for your development order. I want to know if this affects development orders that have already been issued, or do they have to adhere to the code that was there when they adopted?
Mac, you make sure.
You see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, I don't think you can retroactively apply the change. I may be wrong, but I don't believe.
This is not there is no retroactivity in this ordinance.
Okay.
So it's all new projects that are proposing to be re-land used or change the land use to CC.
And
that would be approved on or after the adoption day of this ordinance.
Right.
And is the amount of acreage, is it requiring that they set aside more for these uses or less?
No.
I mean, what
so
are we doing to the acreage?
If I could clarify for the board, what this ordinance does by and large is it establishes minimum parcel sizes for requiring a mixed use in these various categories.
Okay.
Yeah.
And some of those categories, if we were to take a blank land, you'd have to have 10 to 40 acres and still be required to do the mixture of uses within that land use category. Except that when we used the broad brush to paint this back in 2006, there were parcels that weren't large enough to be designated that at the time. And that's what we're trying to address, is to give folks that are on the smaller parcels the opportunity to develop with uses that are consistent with those uses that are allowed in these various categories, but without the requirement to have to do 2 or 3 or more of those uses as the present language requires.
And that's my concern, is that the whole purpose of coastal center and mixed use was to make sure that if you put these high density areas into these groups of land, that there will be other things from them. I mean, if you can't see the writing on the wall in South Walton, is there's going to be so much development that there's going to be nothing for anybody to do. There's not going to be enough places to have access to shop, for your kids to ride their bike. It goes back to the same issue of the sports complex. South Walton is going to become the largest population in Walton County. It's just a matter of time with the number of developments that are here. It's math. And if you don't give kids something to do, you got problems. You got drug use and you got all kind of use that they are going to get into. Well, if you don't give the adults something to do in these developments, you're not going to have land values and stuff increasing. So I think it's very careful that we give up the requirement to put in shopping, to put in stuff like in the coastal center that you can walk to, bike to. We're trying to limit in our comprehensive plan the impacts on 98, because we only got one road, and we might widen 331, but I don't think we're ever going to widen 98 any more than it is. So I'm just concerned that we don't adopt something that picks that up and that we give up the requirements. I'm all for planned units, but I want the whole plan followed. I just don't want to give them an out.
Thank you. Any other comments? It's board's wishes.
Does it do that, Matt? What is the impact of this? Giving up our requirement to mix some uses and provide a whole community?
Well, on small parcels, we are relaxing the requirement to provide a mixed use.
Okay. And that's a conditional use, though? They have to
Yes,
come in with a conditional use?
If they want to do a single use in a land use category that requires a mixed use, if their parcel is small enough, they can come before this board and ask for a conditional use approval to do only a single use.
Less than 5 acres, is that what it is?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That was my question. I didn't know the number.
Yeah, it's less than 5 acres, yeah.
Then come to the board and ask for an exception for single use.
Conditional use, permit,
Okay.
Motion to approve?
Got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. Now we move to the quasi-judicial section.
Anyone who anticipates testifying before the board on any quasi-judicial item on the agenda, would you please stand and raise your right hand? Thank you. To each of you, solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give before the board will be the truth. Thank you. Any commissioner had any ex parte contact with anyone regarding any item on the quasi-judicial? Hearing none. Anyone have any objections to the notice that was provided for tonight's hearings? Mac, it's all yours.
Item number 3 on our agenda is the Peach Creek Phase 2A plat. This is project number 13-003-0017, reviewed by Brian Underwood, and it's a plat application submitted by Interlight Engineering requesting approval to plat 40 residential lots in Peach Creek on 28.04 acres with a future land use of conservation residential development. Project's located adjacent to Old Ferry Road. A representative from the developer is here if you have any questions.
Any questions
I do. I have one question.
for the developer?
On page, maybe somebody can answer this. On page 6 of 7, under the engineering department, they, prior to final plat approval, final engineering sign-off from the county engineering department that the infrastructure improvements have been completed prior to the thing. And then down in the next page, under conditions of approval, it's stated somewhat differently. It says, should final engineering sign-off not be available at the time of recording the developer has to place a surety in the amount of 110%. Does this protect everything so that if they don't, okay, because that was one of our issues, was that if they don't build it like they were supposed to, then the county is perhaps liable for getting stuck with.
Thank you for saying perhaps liable. Yes,
yeah.
Yes, ma'am. That's the whole point. And commissioners, this plat also that you're being asked to approve also has a road dedication to the county. I just want to make sure you're aware of that. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's the only thing. I just wanted to clear that one thing up, and make sure that this project's not going to flood the project to the south of it.
Is that road already paved, Mac? I ain't been there in years. What about the developer? Can he explain? Is Old Ferry Road in this location paved?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, thank you.
So now, and tell us how you're going to address the drainage so that, the area to the south isn't impacted beyond, the norm.
I'm David Smith with Interline Engineering, and I'm representing D.R. Horton. And they're totally different drainage basins. We have different retention ponds on the northern side of the Gulf Power easement.
Okay.
And we're totally self-sustaining. I mean, our drainage goes to our basins, to our retention facilities.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Motion to approve?
Got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. Next item, Commissioner, number 4, the Gulf Landing Plat, project 14-003-00002, reviewed by Tim Whaler, submitted by Ron Volker, requesting approval to plat 8 single-family lots on 1.39 acres for the future land use of neighborhood infill. It's located on the west side of Satinwood Drive, approximately 600 feet north of the County Road 30A intersection with Satinwood Drive.
Commissioners, by way of disclosure, Ron Volker was a former client of mine. I did not represent him on any of this matter, so I don't feel a need to recuse myself, but just so you know that in the interest of disclosure.
Is that it, Mac? I just have
Yes, and this one is, engineering has accepted all the infrastructure.
Oh, okay. So, do they have a drainage plan here, or was it just?
I believe there might be one in here.
I couldn't really tell. They had a utility easement in here, but.
I think this is going to be exfiltration underneath their main roadway.
Okay. Yeah, okay, yeah, I don't think that's it.
Does the applicant wish to speak? Okay. Is there any questions for the applicant?
That's it. Motion to approve.
Okay, we got a motion, second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much, Commissioners. That's all I have.
We do have one more item.
Motion to.
We do need to recognize that it will be Larry Jones's birthday on Sunday.
That's correct.
All right. Yeah, staff.
I don't take the day off.
Bullwinkle.
Take Sunday off.
Staff got any concerns about anything? Seeing none?
No, sir.
No.
No, sir.